I'm Joel Carter, and I've always prided myself on having everything under control. I built my own cybersecurity company from scratch, and I learned to be methodical about every choice I make, whether it's a new hire or a new apartment. So, standing at the entrance of the grand rose-adorned hall on my wedding day, I felt certain I was making the best decision of my life. The music was playing softly, some classical arrangement I could never name. Rows of guests, at least 100 or so, were chatting in hushed, excited voices. My best man, Reed Parker, a longtime friend and my legal advisor, was waiting near the altar. He seemed tense but gave me a reassuring nod as I arrived. My fiancée, Julia? She was in another part of the venue, presumably getting ready with her bridesmaids. I pictured her in that gorgeous lace gown we'd chosen together, simple, elegant, perfect. It was a big day not just for me, but for everyone in the Carter and Lopez families. Julia's father, Victor Lopez, had insisted on paying for half of the wedding, wanting to be part of the celebration. My parents, who passed away a few years back, had left me a modest inheritance, but by that time I was doing well enough on my own, so we used some of it for the ceremony. I'd spared no expense. The venue was a historic mansion overlooking a private garden, the catering by a high-end local chef, the flowers trucked in from out of state. I'd been anxious all morning, understandably, right? I was about to get married. But I had that excited, heart-thumping brand of nerves, the kind that told me, this is going to be an amazing new chapter. Never did I suspect my entire world was about to collapse in a single moment. I stood near the front of the aisle, adjusting my cufflinks for the 10th time. I was wearing a dark, perfectly tailored tux, my hair slicked back, polished shoes reflecting the warm glow of the chandelier. The guests began to settle into their seats, and I could sense the anticipation building. Then I noticed Dawn Hernandez, Julia's best friend, hurriedly crossing the threshold of the chapel area. Dawn wore this teal dress, one of the chosen bridal party colors, and carried a small bouquet. But she seemed on edge. Her eyebrows were scrunched, and her pace was swift, like she was searching for someone. Possibly me. She spotted me, and her face froze in an odd mixture of relief and worry. Before I could ask what was wrong, she disappeared behind a column. Was she just stressed about the last-minute details? Maybe. I tried not to let it alarm me. A wedding day always has a bit of chaos. Maybe she lost the vow cards or needed to check the table settings. I forced a smile at my next thought. Julia is so detail-oriented, she'd never let anything truly go wrong. She's probably just adjusting the floral arches or rewriting her vows. For a second, I thought, what if there's an emergency? But no, there couldn't be. We'd planned this day for months. Reed came to my side. He's a tall, lean guy, always wearing a suit that looks 2 steps more expensive than anything I own. He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and murmured, "You good?" "Yeah," I said, "just feeling that wedding rush." He gave a tight smile. "It'll be fine, man. Just, let's get through the ceremony first. Then we can all breathe." He was being oddly formal. Usually Reed is relaxed, even playful, on big occasions. Something in his eyes suggested there might be tension, maybe some behind-the-scenes fiasco with the caterers. I dismissed it for the moment. We took our positions at the front near the officiant. The music rose. The bridesmaids started their march down the aisle, Dawn among them, clutching her bouquet with a forced grin. Then the music changed tempo, a sign that the bride was about to appear. A hush fell over the crowd. I felt my pulse quicken. Julia stepped into view and my heart almost stopped. She was radiant in that sleeveless gown with floral lace along the bodice. A sheer veil trailed behind her. The sunlight from the high windows caught the shape of her face, casting a glow around her dark hair. Despite the tension I'd been sensing, she smiled at me, or tried to. I realized her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Something about her gaze felt distant. I chalked it up to nerves, but that was the first time I'd ever questioned why we were even at the altar. "Stop it, Joel," I scolded myself. "She's probably just overwhelmed." She did look unbelievably beautiful, and a wave of love crashed through me so strong that I nearly forgot the cracks of uncertainty. Midway down the aisle, my phone vibrated in my pants pocket. Who the hell is texting me during the wedding? I almost ignored it, but something in me, call it an instinct, said to check. I discreetly pulled the phone out, shielding it from the guests with my jacket. One new text from an unknown number. "She's been cheating on you. Check the photos." I blinked. For a second, I thought it was spam, some random scam or a cruel joke. Then a second text followed with an attachment. My curiosity or dread, maybe both, took over. As Julia inched closer, the bridal march echoing, I tapped the attachment, expecting nonsense. But I saw a blurred image that quickly resolved into Julia's face. She was kissing another man. I stared at the phone, my chest going hollow. The next image showed them in a dimly lit hallway, her arms around his neck. Timestamp: 8 days ago. Another shot showed them leaving what looked like a hotel room. I felt my stomach twist. My mind reeled. This can't be real. This must be some troll, some old photo, or a deepfake. But the date stamps were too recent. The time matched exactly a night she told me she was working late at an open house event. I wanted to drop my phone and run, or throw up, or scream. I don't even remember if I was breathing at that moment. My ears started ringing like I'd been hit. The music was so loud, the guests so silent. Julia reached the end of the aisle, smiling timidly, half expecting me to beam at her. I shoved my phone into Reed's hand behind my back, pressing it into his palm without a word. He looked at me questioningly, then at the phone. His eyes widened as he took in the images. That alone told me it wasn't some sick illusion in my mind. Julia stepped up next to me. The officiant smiled widely. The guests turned in their seats with excitement. And I was suspended in a wave of confusion, pain, and anger. Everything slowed. I saw Julia's lips move, something like, "Hey, are you okay?" Her brow creased. I tried to speak, but words tangled in my throat. I heard Reed stepping behind me, probably verifying the details of the pictures. Then he whispered, "Joel, it's real. Date stamps are from last week." I must have gone pale because Julia reached out, concern crossing her face. I leaned in, voice low but trembling. "Who the hell is Brian?" She froze. Her pupils dilated and she inhaled sharply. The officiant began his usual introduction. "Dearly beloved, we gather here." I realized the officiant had no clue what was happening. Julia kept her hand over mine. "Joel, baby, I can explain," she murmured. But I couldn't unsee those photos. Cheating on me? A week before the wedding? My heartbeat slammed in my ears. I could practically feel the eyes of everyone, these hundreds of guests, fixed on the front row. And in that moment, I was positive the entire ceremony was a lie. I stepped back, removing her hand gently. "I can't do this," I said, loud enough for the people in the front rows to hear. A ripple of murmurs shot through the crowd. "Joel!" Julia's voice sounded small, terrified. I turned to the officiant. "I'm sorry, I need to pause. I can't go through with this ceremony right now." Gasps and confusion spread behind us. My father's sister, Aunt Lena, put a hand over her mouth. Some of Julia's relatives stood up from their pews, clearly alarmed. Reed approached, quietly telling the officiant we needed a moment. But the hush turned frantic. People started whispering, "What's happening? Are they calling it off?" Others were leaning into the aisle to see more clearly. I looked straight at Julia. "If you have something to tell me," I said, voice shaking, "tell me now." Tears pooled in her eyes. "Joel, I'm sorry, just please, let's not do this here." She motioned with her hand, urging me to talk in private. A wave of guilt or shame contorted her features. I swallowed thickly. "We're not continuing this ceremony until I know exactly what's going on." Another wave of confusion and speculation roiled through the guests. I saw Dawn behind Julia, looking on in horror, her mouth half open as if she knew something was coming but didn't expect it so soon. We never made it to an explanation. The tension was too palpable. People in the second and third rows began standing, craning their necks. The string quartet in the corner stopped mid-piece, the final note hanging awkwardly in the air. I mustered every ounce of composure I had left. I refused to let tears or fury show. "Everyone," I announced, forcing volume into my voice. "I appreciate you coming today, but I've just learned some things that mean we have to postpone this wedding." Julia tried to grab my arm, panic flaring. "No, Joel, don't." "This wedding is over," I repeated, stepping away from her. "I can't marry someone I don't trust." The words tasted like poison, and my hands were trembling so much I wondered if people could see. The officiant didn't know what to do. He stood there stiffly, looking from me to Julia. Finally, he shut his book. I'm so sorry, folks, he said awkwardly. Julia's father rushed forward. Joel, please, is this a misunderstanding? He looked back at Julia, eyes desperate. The entire front section was a swirl of shocked faces, tears, and confusion. I need answers, I said to him, stepping aside. Until I get them, there's no wedding. I turned on my heel and walked briskly down the aisle, my shoes echoing against the polished floor. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. I felt some sympathetic pats on my shoulder, heard a few gasps of, "Oh my God," and "What is happening?" But I kept going, ignoring the swirl of color and sound around me, my heart pounding like a jackhammer. As I reached the massive double doors of the venue, I fought the urge to smash something. My fiancée of nearly a year, the woman I believed was my soulmate, had apparently cheated on me just days before our wedding, and I only found out through an anonymous text. The bitterness of that realization was almost too much to bear. Reed caught up to me outside, put a hand on my shoulder. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. His silence said it all. "I'm here, man. I'm sorry." I took a deep breath, trying to collect myself, gazing out over the parking lot where all the expensive cars and limos were lined up. A bright, sunny day. Perfect wedding weather. A perfect day for heartbreak. I felt a gentle breeze ruffle my hair. "I'll find out everything," I told Reed, my voice coming out a bit hollow. "But I won't stand up there like a fool." He nodded. "I understand." Behind me, I heard the commotion of guests flowing out into the open air, many of them uncertain if they should congratulate or console. Some stared at me from a distance. A few approached tentatively. I offered no explanation, just a curt, "Thank you for coming, but I have to step away." Julia never rushed out after me. I expected her to. I half anticipated her pleading or screaming that I'd misunderstood, but she didn't appear. Maybe she was just as stunned. Maybe she was in shock, or maybe she was talking to her father. Part of me thought if she truly cared, she'd be out here demanding I listen. But in the midst of that chaos, I wasn't sure if I wanted her near me at all. The strangest part of that day was how numb I felt once I got out to the driveway. I stared at the lines of cars, the smiling wedding banner that read, "Joel and Julia Forever," in curly gold script. I felt no tears, no immediate meltdown. I was raised to keep calm under pressure, so that's what I did. Dawn came barreling out eventually, her heels clicking on the stone walkway. "Joel, oh my God," she said, breathless. "I'm so sorry. I had no clue you'd found out. She never told me anything. She paused, clearly flustered. "I don't know if she told you, but I suspected something was off for weeks. I just didn't think it was real." I stared at her. "You suspected she was having an affair?" She nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. "She canceled appointments, came home late, brushed me off whenever I asked. She was so secretive. But I never saw actual proof. I thought it might just be wedding stress, or she was working extra hours. I swear, Joel, I would have told you if I knew for sure." I scanned her face, deciding if I believed her. Dawn had always been a decent friend, someone Julia hung out with regularly. "She never admitted anything to you?" Dawn shook her head vehemently. "No, but I confronted her once. Asked if there was another guy, and she just stormed off. That was about a month ago." I sighed. "Well, I got the proof today." Oof. "The wedding's not happening." She bit her lip. "I understand." Then she brushed a tear from her cheek. "What are you going to do now?" I closed my eyes. "I'm leaving. I need to figure out my next steps. I'll talk to Julia if she wants to give me an explanation, but right now, I can't look at her." Dawn swallowed. "Okay. Please, if you need anything or any insight, just ask me. I don't want to lose you as a friend." I forced a tiny nod. "We'll see." I left Dawn standing there, pivoted, and got into my car. Within moments, I was driving out of the wedding venue, ignoring the incredulous stares from onlookers. I didn't glance in the rearview mirror. This was supposed to be the best day of my life, I thought bitterly. Now it was the worst. I drove back to my penthouse in Midtown, a place I'd purchased a year earlier in anticipation of married life. The idea was that Julia and I would make a home here after the wedding. Now the building's polished glass facade and 24-hour concierge seemed cold, unwelcoming. When I got upstairs, I tossed my suit jacket on the couch and sank onto the leather armchair. The panoramic windows offered a gorgeous view of the city skyline, but all I could see was her face, Julia's wide-eyed expression, that mixture of guilt and shame. Could she really have done this to me? The images on my phone said yes, but part of me was desperate to find some explanation, some reason that might make it less painful. I checked my phone, noticing missed calls and texts from unknown numbers, probably acquaintances or reporters wanting a statement. My social media was blowing up with "what happened" messages. I set my phone to "do not disturb," except for calls from Reed, then closed my eyes. That's when the flashback started. Not some dramatic lifetime montage, but a series of memories that popped up, each with a question. Was she lying then? I recalled the first time I met Julia. She was at an open house, standing in front of a sleek condo listing, handing out brochures and charming everyone who walked in. I was looking for a secondary property at the time. She caught my eye with her confident smile, her knowledge of the market. She introduced herself as Julia Lopez. I remember how she wore a burgundy blazer and black heels, professional yet approachable. Something about her just clicked with me, and within minutes, I found myself more interested in her than in the condo. We started dating a few weeks later. I admired her drive and independence. She admired my ambition, or so she said. We had so much in common: the love of late-night movies, the desire to travel, a shared sense of humor. 6 months in, she confided her dream of starting her own real estate agency one day. I told her about my cybersecurity firm, how I'd grown it from a small freelance gig into a thriving enterprise that secured government contracts. She seemed genuinely impressed. But I never suspected her of wanting me for my money. Not once. She came off as self-made, proud, uninterested in handouts. I sometimes wondered if she was too proud. She insisted on paying for half our dinners, refused any big gifts unless it was for a special occasion. She also pulled in good commissions some months. She made more than me, and that only reinforced my belief that she wasn't after my bank account. Yet was that all an act? If she was so self-sufficient, why cheat with some guy named Brian? I felt a jolt of anger. The memory of that text, those pictures, bit into my mind. My phone buzzed. Caller ID. Reed. I answered, voice hoarse. Hey. He exhaled on the other end. Hey, man, where are you? At home. Trying to process. Look, I'm sorry about everything. I wanted to check in. Are you okay? No, but I'm not losing it either, just numb. Reed hesitated. Did you talk to Julia yet? I snorted. No. She tried calling me, but I let it go to voicemail. I have nothing to say until I figure out how deep this goes. Understood, he said gently. Listen, I've seen the pictures, and the metadata is legit. They're from last week. I cross-referenced them on my phone before I left. They're real. My throat felt tight. I know. You might want to gather more evidence before you do anything drastic legally. If this is bigger than a one-night stand, if there's money involved, it could get messy. I was thinking the same thing, I told him. I want the truth, Reed. Every detail, he sighed. It might be easier to talk to Julia directly. But she might lie, I retorted. I can't trust her anymore. Right, he admitted. Then maybe look for some digital breadcrumbs. You do run a cybersecurity company, after all. I chewed my lip. I might, but first I need to be sure of one thing. Is she messing with me financially? I recall we set up a joint account for wedding expenses. I need to see if anything's missing. That's a good start, he said. Let me know if I can help on the legal side. Thanks, Reed. I ended the call and decided to do exactly that, check the finances. There was a joint wedding fund we both contributed to. It wasn't huge, just enough to cover some extraneous wedding costs. I logged in and saw that everything was intact. No suspicious transfers. At least she didn't drain that. Then I pulled up my personal accounts, scanning every transaction, nothing unusual. Next, I checked my business account, still secure. If she was after my money, it didn't show up here. I exhaled slowly, feeling a slight relief. But relief quickly gave way to anger. If she wasn't after the money, then what was this about? Passion? Some fling? My stomach churned at the idea that she might just have wanted more excitement, or that she'd found me lacking in some intangible way. Out of nowhere, my phone started buzzing again. It was an unlisted number. Something made me pick up. A gravelly voice spoke. "Hey, Joel Carter! Who's this?" "Look, I don't have much time. I sent you those photos." I froze, stepping away from my desk. "Who are you?" "I'm someone who thought you should know the truth," the voice said in a low tone. "Julia's messing around with a guy named Brian McAdams. She meets him at a weekly motel out by the highway. That's where I took the pictures." My heart was pounding. "Why would you do that?" The voice hesitated. "Let's just say Brian owes me. I wanted to throw a wrench in his life, and letting you walk into that wedding blind seemed wrong. Also, I can't stand cheaters, so I'm doing you a favor." I tried to remain calm. "How do you know so much?" "I know a lot. I can't talk more. If you need proof, check the Redwood Motel off exit 72. They meet there on Tuesday nights, typically around 7 p.m. He drives a black BMW. She's in a silver Lexus. You want more specifics, figure it out yourself. I'm done." And he hung up. I stared at the phone. Redwood Motel exit 72. That's a half-hour drive from my place. Brian McAdams. That was a lead, at least. I realized how insane this was, like a scene from a B-grade detective show. Yet it was my life now. I typed the name Brian McAdams into a search engine. Got a bunch of random LinkedIn profiles, some local accountants, a dentist, but nothing that jumped out. I refined the search to my city, added the phrase real estate. One result, a Brian G. McAdams, real estate investor, age 33, specialized in flipping houses. I found a local article praising him for some successful property deals. I stared at his smug headshot. He had slicked back hair, bright white teeth, and a confident grin that might be described as charming or arrogant, depending on your perspective. Could this be the same guy? Real estate investor would align with Julia's job in property sales. The pieces started to fall into place. If he was her client, that's likely how they met. I scrolled deeper, found hints of him being involved in several big transactions across the county. Then I found some posts on real estate forums complaining that he was shady, didn't pay contractors on time, cut corners, faced lawsuits. So he might be a risk-taker or con artist. If Julia was working with him, did she get caught up in something illegal? I felt my fists clench. I was no saint, but I lived by a code: honesty in business and personal relationships. This potential scumbag had turned my fiancée into, what exactly? A conspirator? Or was it just lust? My phone chimed again, a text from Julia. Against my better judgment, I opened it. "Joel, please. I know what you saw. It's not what you think. I'm at my parents' house right now. I can't face the world until we talk. Please come see me. I need to explain." I stared at her words for a long time. A storm of emotion swirled in my gut. Anger, hurt, love, confusion. Should I go see her? Every fiber in me screamed, "Don't let her spin more lies." But a smaller voice said, "You deserve an explanation. You should at least look her in the eye and hear what she has to say." I typed a quick response. "Not ready to talk. Need space." Then I set the phone aside, ignoring its subsequent buzz. Even though I told her I needed space, my mind was swirling with questions. I stood, paced around my living room, then decided I needed air. My building's rooftop terrace was usually a good place to think. I rode the elevator to the top, stepped out into the mild afternoon sun. The city spread out below like a labyrinth of concrete and steel. I took a seat on one of the lounge chairs, mind racing. Bits and pieces of Julia's strange behavior over the past few months came back to me. The time she missed a friend's birthday dinner, claiming a last-minute showing. The phone calls she took in the other room, her voice hushed. The weekend she visited her sick aunt, only to return with a suspiciously upbeat mood. Suddenly, it all formed a pattern, painting a picture I didn't want to see. My phone rang again, but this time it was Dawn. I answered because I knew she was close to Julia, and maybe she had more insight. "Joel," she began, voice shaky. "I just left Julia. She's a mess. I mean, I've never seen her like this." "And?" I said stiffly. "She keeps saying she didn't mean for any of this to happen. That it was a mistake. Something about Brian being her client, and it got complicated." I tightened my jaw. Complicated enough to sleep with him a week before our wedding? I know, she said, her tone full of regret. I'm not defending her. I wanted you to know she's not shrugging this off. She's crying nonstop, saying she's terrified you'll never forgive her. She's right to be terrified. I have zero tolerance for betrayal. Dawn was silent for a moment. Then she sighed. Yeah. Look, I won't push you to talk to her, but if you do, maybe you'll get some closure or at least clarity. She's at her parents', barely speaking to them. She keeps saying your name over and over, apologizing. I closed my eyes. She can apologize all she wants. I want to know if this was a one-night stand, an ongoing affair, or something else entirely. She claims it was a one-time thing, Dawn offered. I can't confirm or deny, obviously, but that's what she said. One time? The photo said otherwise. The text from that mysterious informant said otherwise. I grit my teeth. I'm not sure I believe that. That's fair, Dawn murmured. I just wanted you to know I'm here if you need an inside perspective. I'm as blindsided as you are, though obviously not as hurt. You were about to marry her, for God's sake. My chest tightened. I appreciate it, Dawn. Before we hung up, she whispered, I really am sorry, Joel. I ended the call, the weight of everything pressing down on me. A one-time thing? That has to be a lie. The photos were from different days and angles, and if the Redwood Motel was their usual spot, it wasn't a single slip-up. I rose from the lounge chair, gazed at the city, and made a decision. I'm going to gather evidence. I refuse to be the clueless fiancé who believes lame excuses. She'd humiliated me, our families, and even if I still loved her somewhere deep down, I needed to protect myself. My background in cybersecurity gave me certain tools. I'd once set up Julia's email and installed a cloud backup on her laptop. In theory, I could remotely access some of her data if she hadn't changed the passwords. Was it moral? Under normal circumstances, maybe not. But I felt justified, given the betrayal. I need the truth. She'd forfeited her right to privacy when she started sleeping with another man behind my back. I headed back down to my penthouse and fired up my workstation. It didn't take long to guess the password she used for her cloud storage. The same one we used for Netflix, Candy Cane 22. She was never that creative with passwords. Within minutes, I was looking at her email backups, sifting through archived messages, searching for Brian, McAdams, Redwood, or anything suspicious. I struck gold fairly quickly. She had a folder labeled Clients Active. Inside were subfolders for each major client. I found McAdams B. Opening it, I saw dozens of emails, some strictly business arranging showings, discussing property listings. But deeper in, I discovered something else. Personal emails. More like love notes. In one, Brian wrote, I miss your smile. Can't wait to see you next Tuesday. The Redwood is booked under our usual alias. Another email from Julia read, Can we finalize this property transfer before the wedding? Joel can't find out about the sale. He'll ask why you're paying me extra. My stomach flipped. Paying her extra? For what? I sat there scanning email after email. Some were borderline explicit in describing their relationship. They had a nickname for each other, B and Jules. Several references to your fiancé or the big wedding day made me want to punch a wall. My eyes locked onto one message from 2 weeks ago. From Brian 2, Julia subject, the plan. Julia, I told you, the easiest route is to get him to sign off on the investment. If he invests in that property under our new LLC, we'll both profit. You said he's got deep pockets, so why not nudge him? He doesn't have to know I'm involved. Keep using your sweet talk. Remember, you said you can handle it. If you can get him on board before the wedding, we're in the clear. Then even if you break it off after the wedding, we'll have the funds. Reading that made my blood boil. So they were conspiring financially, not just a fling, but an elaborate plan to siphon my money into some property deal. Julia's real estate knowledge plus Brian's cunning. Could they have been planning to scam me all along? I scrolled to the next in the thread. From Julia 2, Brian subject, the plan. Brian, I told you, Joel's not an idiot. He'll notice if the LLC is fishy. Let me handle it. I know how to push him gently. But if he says no, we'll figure something else out. I can always claim I need a loan for personal reasons. I just need more time. This wedding is stressful enough. Don't pressure me about dates." The message ended there. I trembled with rage, reading how casual they were about my money. She was stringing me along. The idea that her affection could have been just an act, a means to an end, made me feel sick. I spent the next hour sifting through more messages, confirming my worst fears. This was an ongoing affair, financially motivated, disguised by her public persona as my loving fiancée. No wonder she seemed so distant these past weeks. She probably felt guilty, or maybe not guilty enough to stop. Finally, I had to close out. My vision was blurred, adrenaline coursing through me. She scammed me. She lied to me. She cheated on me. The heartbreak was real, but fueling it now was a fierce sense of betrayal that transcended mere infidelity. She'd tried to rob me, whether emotionally or monetarily. It didn't matter. I forced myself to stand up, rub my temples. My phone beeped with a text. This time from Reed. "You find anything?" I typed back, "Yes. She's been working a scheme with Brian for months. They talked about scamming me through a property deal." A moment later, Reed responded, "Holy hell. Let's meet tomorrow to discuss the legal angle. Sleep if you can." "Sure," I answered, though I knew sleep wasn't likely. I paced the living room, rewriting the entire narrative of my relationship with Julia in my head. Had she ever truly loved me? Or was it all a mask? Eventually, exhaustion forced me to lie down. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, haunted by her face, her laughter at dinner dates, and those times she whispered, "I love you," in my ear. Now it felt like every memory was tainted. I realized that while I might still feel love for Julia, I sure as hell didn't trust her. And that mixture was agony. Come morning, I was no closer to peace. But one thing had crystallized. I'm not going to let this slide. I'd built my life through sheer will and intellect, and I wouldn't let some con artist and her side piece tear it all down. If they wanted to play dirty, they'd just pick the wrong guy to swindle. I woke up on my couch with a stiff neck, the city's early sunlight streaming in. I changed into a shirt and sweats, ignoring the rumpled tux on the floor, a symbol of my almost wedding. No point lamenting the cost or the heartbreak. I had a plan forming. First step, see Reed and lay out all the evidence. Second step, secure my assets so Julia couldn't slip in some hidden way. Third step, figure out how to handle Brian. I wasn't sure if revenge was the right word for what I was feeling, but I sure wanted justice for the massive betrayal. I showered, shaved, and forced down a cup of black coffee. My appetite was non-existent. While brushing my teeth, I caught my reflection in the mirror, dark circles under my eyes, tension etched into my features. "Get it together, man," I muttered. "You can't fold now." At about 9 a.m., I headed to Reed's law office. It occupied an upscale suite in a modern building. The receptionist recognized me immediately and ushered me back to Reed's office. He was behind a wide mahogany desk, wearing a crisp gray suit, hair combed immaculately. On the wall behind him hung a framed law degree and some legal accolades. "Joel," he greeted, standing up to shake my hand. "You look like you barely slept." "Observant," I said wryly, taking a seat. "I did some digging last night." "Tell me everything." I spent the next 15 minutes summarizing the emails, the references to shady property deals, the Redwood Motel. He listened intently, occasionally jotting notes. When I finished, he let out a slow whistle. "That's rough. It's not just infidelity. It's potential fraud." "Exactly." He tapped his pen on the notepad. "You said you found an email referencing an LLC they wanted you to invest in. Did you give them any money?" I shook my head. "No, she was in the nudging phase. The wedding was probably the final step to ensure she'd have leverage as my wife if I refused. Or maybe they planned for me to sign something official on the honeymoon. I don't know." He frowned. "At least they didn't succeed in scamming you yet. That means you're mostly financially secure. Legally, you're in a good position since you never tied the knot." I felt a twinge in my chest. Yeah, I guess calling off the wedding saved me from a bigger disaster. But I still feel like a complete idiot. Reed gave me a sympathetic nod. "I get that. But let's focus on controlling the damage. You can press charges if there was an attempt at fraud. However, it might be complicated because they never actually took your money." I folded my arms. "There's also the emotional betrayal. I'm not sure I just want to let them off the hook and go on with my life as if nothing happened." He leaned back in his chair. "I understand. But let's be strategic. If Julia tries to claim any funds that you shared, like for the wedding, she might push for a settlement, emotional distress, or some nonsense. We can head that off. Also, if we can show her moral and legal wrongdoing, we can bury any attempt she makes. That resonated with me. So gather more evidence to ensure she can't spin this. Exactly. He paused. What about Brian? Are you planning to confront him directly? I clenched my teeth. Not yet, but I might have to. He's a major piece of this puzzle. Reed sighed. Just be careful. If he's shady enough to orchestrate a con, he might not hesitate to do something worse. I nodded. I'll keep my guard up. Reed and I went over the steps. 1. Freeze any joint accounts or credit lines. 2. Remove Julia's name from anything she might exploit. 3. Keep a low profile in the media. He suggested I not speak publicly about the canceled wedding to avoid giving them a chance to spin the story. By the time I left, I felt more anchored. I had a plan. My heartbreak still simmered, but at least I wasn't floundering. Outside, I saw Dawn waiting near the building's cafe. She greeted me with a tired smile. Hey, I knew you were meeting Reed, so I came by in case you wanted to talk. My instincts told me to be cautious after all. She was Julia's best friend. But she also seemed genuinely concerned for me, maybe even more than for Julia. Okay, I said. Let's grab a coffee. We found a small table in the corner, the scent of espresso and pastries filling the air. I took a seat, and she sat across from me, setting her purse on the floor. I sipped my coffee. How's Julia? Dawn's shoulders slumped. She's not good. She left her parents' house early this morning. I'm not sure where she went. She's not picking up my calls. She can't hide forever, I muttered. Dawn pursed her lips. Joel, can I be honest with you? Go ahead. She leaned forward. I think she's in way over her head. I saw her phone a few weeks ago accidentally. She got a text from someone named Brian asking about money. I confronted her and she brushed me off. But I had this gut feeling she was messing with something dangerous. I stared at my coffee. She definitely was. This guy Brian is not just any fling. He's manipulative. She might have thought she was in control, but I found emails that say otherwise. Dawn's eyes widened. Emails? Yeah. They indicate a scheme to siphon my money into some real estate investment. Dawn shook her head slowly. I knew she was secretive, but I didn't realize it was that bad. Did she ever mention a financial motive to you or anything like that? No, but she kept pushing me to invest in certain property deals. I was busy with my own business, so I never really followed through. Dawn sighed. She probably wasn't always like this. I mean, I've known her for years. She was always a go-getter, but not shady. Maybe something changed when she met Brian. Who knows? I shrugged. Doesn't matter now. She chose her path. There was a pause. She fiddled with her cup. I just want you to know, I'm here to help if you need it. I can't stand what she did. You deserve better. I appreciated her candor. Thank you. I might take you up on that. We parted ways, and I returned to my penthouse. The doorman gave me a sympathetic look, obviously aware I was supposed to be on a honeymoon by now. I forced a tight-lipped smile and took the elevator up in silence. Inside, I checked my phone again. Another message from Julia. Joel, please pick up. I can't do this. It's not what it seems. The nerve she had to say, it's not what it seems, after I found explicit emails discussing how she'd scam me. My emotions seethed, but I forced myself to remain calm and methodical. No confrontation until I have a full arsenal of evidence and a plan. I made some phone calls to the bank, ensuring all accounts were locked down. Then I changed the locks on any shared properties we had, which, fortunately, were minimal. The big question remained. What do I do about Redwood Motel and Brian? Part of me wanted to go there in person, see if they'd meet at their usual alias. Another part worried it might escalate into something violent. I'm no vigilante, but I needed more proof, or at least a chance to observe. If I found them together, that would confirm the affair beyond any doubt, though I already have enough to know it's real. My reason told me to let it go, but my fury told me otherwise. I decided to do some cyber snooping on Brian. I found a few social media profiles, mostly private. On one platform, he posted pictures of himself with fancy cars, exotic vacations, and used hashtags about property investments. I tried to see his list of followers or posts about Redwood Motel. Nothing obvious, but I did come across a hidden link, something only a friend or advanced user might notice. With my cybersecurity knowledge, I navigated to an archived page that revealed a handful of unlisted videos, private vlogs or something. Most were locked. One was a short clip from his phone, apparently a drunken night out. The audio was poor, but I caught a snippet of him bragging, "Yeah, man, Julia's got that fiancée who's loaded. Once she's in, we'll flip the property, bank the profit, easy money." I felt my blood pressure spike. So he was just using Julia to get to me? Or maybe they were both using each other. Either way, he was scum. I saved the clip and pinned it to a local storage. With each piece of evidence, I saw my future revenge plan shaping up. I wasn't sure exactly how I'd deliver the final blow, but I knew I wanted them to feel the consequences. No one makes me look like a chump, especially not at my own wedding. That evening, the door buzzer rang. Startled, I checked the security cam. Julia stood there in plain clothes, her eyes red-rimmed, hair disheveled. She looked like she'd been crying for hours. My heart pounded. She pressed the buzzer again. I stared at the screen, torn between letting her in or ignoring her. Eventually, I walked over to the intercom. "What do you want?" I asked, voice cold through the speaker. She inhaled shakily. "Please, let me talk. Just 5 minutes. We can go somewhere else if you want. I just need to see you." I hesitated. "I'm not sure that's a good idea." She pressed a hand to her forehead. "Joel, I'm begging you. We were about to be married. I can't sleep. I can't think I made a huge mistake." A part of me felt an old protective instinct. Another part reminded me she was a liar. 2 minutes, I said finally. "In the lobby. Not in my apartment." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she nodded. "Okay." I took the elevator down, my pulse racing. When the doors opened, I saw her standing by a potted plant, arms wrapped around herself. She looked up as I approached, and tears welled in her eyes. She started to move forward to hug me, but I held up a hand. "What do you want?" I repeated. "Joel," she whispered, voice quivering. "I'm so sorry. Everything got out of control. Brian was just a client at first. Then it turned into something else. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I stared at her. Why? Why cheat at all, especially a week before the wedding? She took a shuddering breath. "He was pushing me. We had a fling a while back before you proposed. Then I tried to break it off, but he wouldn't leave me alone. He threatened to tell everyone if I didn't keep meeting him. I was trapped, Joel. That's the truth." She looked so pitiful, tears streaming down her cheeks, but I'd seen the emails implying she was an active participant. "Trapped? Or did you see a way to profit?" I challenged. She blinked. "Profit? No, that was Brian's idea. He told me we could make money if you invested. I swear, I didn't want to do it, but he kept insisting. I was scared." I scoffed. "You wrote him emails encouraging the plan. You were hardly an innocent victim." Her eyes widened. "You read my emails?" "Damn right I did. Did you forget I set up your email system? I saw everything." My voice shook with anger. "Including the Redwood Motel. That's not once, Julia. It was many times." She pressed her lips together, new tears falling. "I can't defend that. I'm guilty. But I do love you, Joel. I never stopped loving you." I clenched my jaw. "You have a funny way of showing it." She sniffled. "I know, I messed up. Please, I'll do anything to fix it. I'll cut Brian off completely. I'll sign whatever you want. Just let me try to make amends." I paused, considering her desperation. "Why should I believe you? How can I trust you ever again?" She stepped closer, her eyes pleading. "I don't deserve your trust, but I'm asking for a chance to at least prove I'm remorseful. If you want me to sign a statement admitting everything, I will. I'll never see Brian again. I'll do anything you say." I felt a knot in my chest. This was the woman I once planned a future with, now reduced to begging in a lobby. Did I pity her? Maybe a little, but not enough to let her off. "Confessing might be a start," I said slowly. "But that's not going to erase what you've done." She wiped her cheeks, nodding vigorously. "I know. If you want me to write an affidavit or something, I will. I'll do it right now." A grim idea sparked in my mind. If I can get her confession in writing, I can protect myself from any future legal or financial claims. Then maybe use it to turn the tables. Fine, I said curtly. Tomorrow, meet me at Reed's office at noon. We'll have it notarized. Then we'll talk. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. Thank you, Joel. Thank you. I swear, you won't regret giving me this chance. I haven't given you anything yet, I said, stepping back. Now leave. I don't want to talk more tonight. She offered a weak nod, tears still streaming. I'm sorry, she whispered again, then walked out of the lobby. I watched her go, mind whirling. So that's her angle now, claiming she was forced by Brian, but I have proof she was willing. Regardless of who initiated it, she betrayed me. Let her sign a confession if she's that desperate. I'll keep it in my back pocket. I returned to the elevator, shoulders tense. Anger warred with heartbreak, but overshadowing both was the cold determination to see this through. If she wanted to save face, I'd let her believe there was a path to redemption. Meanwhile, I'd gather everything I needed to ensure neither she nor Brian could ever threaten me again. The next day arrived with an overcast sky. I headed to Reed's office early, an uneasy mixture of excitement and dread roiling in my stomach. Reed was waiting with a typed affidavit detailing Julia's admissions. The affair, the property scheme, the Redwood Motel, everything. If she signed it, I'd have a bulletproof record. Around noon, Julia showed up, hair pulled back in a low ponytail, wearing slacks and a conservative blouse. She clutched her purse like it was a security blanket. Her eyes flicked to me, then to Reed. She gave a small nod of acknowledgement. Reed got straight to business. He explained the document in calm, professional tones, pointing out that it was a sworn statement. Julia listened, biting her lip, glancing at me several times as if hoping for reassurance. I gave her none. When Reed was done, she picked up the pen. Her hand trembled. I really do love you, she whispered to me, ignoring Reed's presence. I didn't reply. She signed the affidavit, tear droplets smudging some of the ink. Reed had a notary in the office witness it. With that done, she placed the pen down, looking both relieved and devastated. Reed stored the affidavit safely. Julia, this legal statement confirms you knowingly engaged in an affair and considered a fraudulent property scheme. It acknowledges that Joel has no financial obligation to you. You understand, correct? She nodded. Yes. He went on. It also states you waive any claims to compensation for the canceled wedding, including emotional distress or shared property disputes. Are you certain you wish to agree to that? Another nod. Yes. I just want to make this right. Make it right? Too late for that. I said nothing. I merely watched her with a detached gaze. I could see how crushed she looked, but I reminded myself that her tears could be self-pity more than actual remorse. When the notary stepped out, Julia tried again to speak to me in private. Reed offered to leave the room, but I told him to stay. No secrets, I said sharply. She swallowed. Joel, I know I hurt you in the worst way. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm begging you, please let me explain my side in more detail. I folded my arms. Go ahead. We're listening. She took a moment, collecting her thoughts. I met Brian about 6 months ago at a property showing. He was charming, said he was an investor who could help me close deals faster. We started texting, then we got drinks a few times. Eventually, it became physical. I tried to end it after you proposed, but he threatened to tell you if I stopped helping him. And he implied he had evidence photos, videos. I was terrified you'd leave me. Quite the irony, I noted dryly. She flinched but continued. He also convinced me we could make a lot of money, that I deserved better commissions, that you'd never share your wealth with me openly, so I should do something to secure my future. I was stupid enough to believe him. Reed raised an eyebrow. Were you also directly receiving payments from Brian? Her cheeks reddened. Sometimes he'd give me these advance commissions or gifts. I know it was unethical. But I was caught up in the fantasy, the thrill. I didn't realize how deep I'd sunk until it was too late. My hands gripped the edge of the table. You had half a year to stop. You didn't. She sniffled. I know. Every time I tried, he blackmailed me with telling you everything. It was a cycle of guilt and fear. And I did still love you, Joel. I never stopped. I wanted the wedding, but I also felt trapped by Brian's hold on me. I exchanged a glance with Reed. It was possible Brian had manipulated her, but those emails also showed Julia actively pushing the plan forward. The truth might be a messy swirl of manipulation and greed, yet my sympathy was limited. I calmly said, "So you mean to tell me that every day you woke up, you let him blackmail you, lying to me, and continuing the affair?" "I find that hard to believe, Julia." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I'm not asking you to believe it. I'm only asking you to know I regret it." I stared at her for a moment. "Well, you signed the affidavit. We're done here." She looked stricken. "But can't we just talk outside? 5 minutes?" "No," I said flatly. "I don't trust you to speak without twisting facts." She bit her lip hard, tears pooling again. Then she slowly stood. If you change your mind, you know where to reach me." I said nothing, turning away as she left. Reed waited until she was gone before letting out a long breath. "That was intense." I nodded. "But worth it. We have her confession. She can't spin a lawsuit or claim partial ownership of anything. If we're lucky, she'll disappear." He tapped a folder. "Let's keep this safe. If Brian tries to blackmail you, we can use Julia's statement to bury him, too." I gave a grim smile. "Yeah." Half an hour later, I was in the building's lobby about to leave when I saw Brian striding in through the rotating doors. Tall, broad shoulders, wearing a tailored suit, the face I recognized from his online profile. He locked eyes with me, an expression of smug hostility creeping over his features. I clenched my jaw. So this is the asshole. He walked over, ignoring the security guard's polite attempt to stop him. Right away, I sensed that cocky arrogance rolling off him like cheap cologne. "Joel Carter, right?" he asked, voice loud enough to draw stares. I nodded. "You must be Brian." He sneered. "I see Julia's already signing away her life to you." I was about to walk past, but he stepped in my path. "Move," I warned softly. He scoffed. "No, I don't think I will. I'm not letting you or that snake of a lawyer corner Julia into some bullshit settlement." I let out a quiet laugh. "You're the one who orchestrated a con." She confessed. He glared. "She told me she's sorry, that she wants to fix things. But you're tying her hands with legal documents. Where's your humanity?" That made me snap. Humanity? Where was yours when you pursued my fiancée behind my back, blackmailed her, tried to rob me? Don't talk to me about humanity." He smirked. "She was my woman before she was yours, and if you weren't so clueless, you'd have noticed." I curled my fists, controlling the urge to deck him. The building security guard approached, anxious. "Everything okay, Mr. Carter?" I shot him a quick glance. "Yeah, I'm fine. This gentleman was just leaving." Brian's eyes flicked to the guard. He took a half step back. "You know," he said, voice low, "your fiancée might have fallen for me, but at least I gave her the excitement you never could." A smug grin twisted his lips. That stung, but I refused to be rattled. "Right. Great job, Casanova. Now she's left with nothing and you're about to be in trouble, too." He threatened, "You think you can just bury us with legal documents? I have the real story of how you manipulated Julia. I can sell it to the tabloids, paint you as the controlling fiancé who drove her into my arms." I arched an eyebrow. "Try it. I have enough evidence to crush any false story you spin." I paused, seeing the flicker in his eyes. "Now, if you're done, I suggest you get the hell out of my way." He let out a harsh laugh. "I'll be around, Carter. Don't get too comfortable in your little kingdom." Then he turned on his heel and strode out, his footsteps echoing across the polished floor. I unclenched my fists, letting out a tense breath. The guard gave me a concerned look. "You sure you're all right?" I forced a calm nod. "Yes, thank you." But inside, my blood was boiling. Brian had basically declared war. Fine, I thought. You want to fight? Let's do it on my turf, where you can't bully me with lies. That's when I decided to move from mere defense to offense. I called Reed from my car, recapping the confrontation. He exhaled heavily over the line. "Sounds like he's trying to intimidate you. Don't take the bait." "Oh, I'm not. But we need to be ready to strike if he tries blackmail or a smear campaign." "Agreed," Reed said. "Let's finalize that plan we discussed." I've got a private investigator contact who can dig up additional dirt on Brian, any criminal history, lawsuits, or damaging secrets. Let's see if we can scare him off or press charges. Perfect. Let's do it, I said. He thinks I'll just roll over. I won't. We hung up, and I gripped the steering wheel. My heart pounded with adrenaline. Revenge might be an ugly word, but it's exactly what I want. Not necessarily out of sadistic pleasure, but to ensure neither of them ruins my life further. They gambled with my trust, tried to steal from me. I'd show them I'm not some gullible fiancé. I had resources, financial, legal, technological. If Brian wanted to test me, he'd learn the hard way. I set the car in drive, heading back to my penthouse. A swirl of grim determination and heartbreak churned in my gut. At least now, I had Julia's signed confession, and I knew exactly who Brian was. It was time to put them both in checkmate. After meeting Brian face-to-face in Reed's lobby, I was filled with a strange, volatile mix of anxiety and exhilaration. The man had all but declared war, convinced he could intimidate me into submission. I kept replaying his smug expression, the way he threw out insults like confetti. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured Julia's tear-stained face signing the affidavit and Brian's taunting grin. It was enough to make my blood boil. But if there was one advantage I had, it was knowing exactly who I was dealing with. Between Julia's confession and my rummaging through her emails, I had a clear picture. Brian was an opportunist. He loved risk, thrived on illusions of power, and enjoyed toying with other people's emotions and finances. He also apparently had a big mouth. That combination could be turned against him if I played my cards right. Reed and I decided we needed more than just her affidavit. We wanted to catch Brian in the act of a direct crime. The extortion angle, where he threatened to sell false stories to the tabloids unless I paid him, was prime territory for a legal takedown. All I needed was to coax him into trying it again, this time on record. Of course, that meant orchestrating a meeting, which was the last thing I wanted. To sit across from the bastard who'd helped ruin my wedding and watch him gloat. But I was willing to endure a short dinner or conversation if it meant nailing him for good. I'd lean on my technical skill and the help of local law enforcement to ensure it was all captured by hidden devices. Once he was taped extorting me, I'd have an airtight case. A plan began to take shape. If Brian thought I was rattled, it might be easier to lure him in. I just had to swallow my pride. Pretend I was shaken but desperate to stop him from going public with more humiliating details. So I had Reed coordinate with a couple of plainclothes detectives who specialized in fraud and extortion. We arranged that they'd be close by, ready to step in once Brian made his move. I'd set up the location, a high-profile restaurant downtown, the kind with an upscale lounge area and private booths. Enough quiet corners for covert recordings, but also enough potential onlookers to keep Brian from trying something violent. I guessed he wasn't the physically aggressive type, more the smooth-talking con man. Either way, I'd come prepared. So that was the honey trap. I'd invite him to talk, claiming I was worried he'd ruin me with fake stories about my engagement stories that would say I was the manipulative one, or that I was a controlling fiancé who forced Julia into a loveless arrangement. The tabloids love scandal, especially wealthy business owners. If the public believed his lies, it could tarnish my reputation enough to cost me future clients and partnerships. I planned to text him, act like I was cracking under the pressure, and see if he would meet me. If he showed, odds were he'd try to extort me once more. The cops would witness it all. Then we'd snap the trap shut. I hated the idea of engaging with him, but I reminded myself it was worth it. And deep inside, I couldn't wait to watch his arrogance melt when he realized he wasn't in control at all. That morning I sat at my dining table, scanning the skyline while composing the text to Brian. Brian, let's bury the hatchet. If you have something you want from me, let's talk it out in person. I'm sure we can reach an agreement. If you promise not to release any stories, I might be willing to pay for your silence. Let's meet at the Emerson Lounge, tomorrow at 7 p.m. It was a bit on the nose, but I wanted to dangle exactly the kind of bait he'd find irresistible. I threw in some clumsy wording to make it sound like I was anxious and ready to cave to his demands. He responded within an hour. I'll see you there. Don't be late. Simple enough. I forwarded the exchange to Reed, who passed it along to the detectives. They arranged for 2 officers to pose as diners, plus a third outside to coordinate. We tested a discreet microphone that I'd wear inside my jacket, ensuring I could capture audio at the table. The restaurant's management, having a good relationship with local law enforcement, agreed to let them record as long as we didn't disturb other guests. Everything was set. Throughout the day, I tried to stay focused on work. My cybersecurity firm had a new project analyzing potential vulnerabilities in a municipal data system. But every time I typed a line of code or reviewed a security protocol, my mind drifted back to Julia. Her sorrowful face, her trembling signature on the affidavit. For a split second, I felt a pang of guilt about how harsh I'd been, refusing to speak with her. But then I'd remember the Redwood Motel, the emails, the betrayal, and I'd remind myself that I wasn't the villain here. Dawn texted me around lunch. "Hey, not sure if you know, but Julia is basically in hiding. She's apparently not returning her parents' calls now. I hope you're okay. Let me know if you need anything." I typed back, "Thanks, Dawn. I'm fine. Dealing with some business tonight. We'll keep you posted." I didn't want to tip her off about the sting operation. The fewer people who knew, the less chance of a leak. Heather, my COO, also stopped by my office that afternoon, concern etched on her face. "Joel, you doing all right? You've been locked in here all day. I asked you a question earlier about the new payroll system, and you didn't even blink." I gave her a faint smile. "Sorry, Heather. My mind's on a complicated personal matter. I'll handle the payroll system by tomorrow." She frowned sympathetically. "I get it. The wedding fiasco's got to be a huge emotional drain. But remember, you don't have to do everything alone. If you need me to pick up any slack, just say so." I appreciated that. Heather was unflinchingly loyal, a pillar in the company, someone I'd known for years. "I'm okay. I just have a meeting tonight that might solve some of my problems." She raised an eyebrow. "Anything I can help with?" I shook my head. "Not this time. It's outside your job description." I tried to lighten the mood with a small grin. She nodded, gave me a fair enough smile, and stepped out. After she left, I stared at the closed door, grateful to have a team that had my back. I just needed to get through tonight. That evening, I arrived at the Emerson Lounge early. It was nestled on the top floor of a luxury hotel, with sweeping views of the city. The hostess led me to a corner table with plush velvet seating, dim lighting, and a perfect vantage point of the rest of the lounge. My heart pounded, but I forced myself to appear calm. Two men sat at a nearby booth, pretending to read menus. I recognized them from photos Reed had shown me, Detectives Carter and Rios. They gave me the faintest nod, confirming they were in position. I adjusted the small button mic concealed inside my jacket's lapel. We'd tested it in the parking lot outside. A third officer, Detective Hernandez, was waiting in the hotel lobby, ready to come up if needed. The restaurant's manager, Mr. Lyons, had discreetly told the waitstaff to leave my table alone after we ordered drinks, so we'd have some privacy. At 6:55, I sipped a glass of water, trying to calm the adrenaline rushing through me. My phone lay on the table, face down. I stared at the ice cubes, counting them as a way to ground myself. Then I heard the elevator ding across the room. Brian stepped out, wearing a sleek black suit with no tie, his shirt's top 2 buttons undone. He exuded confidence, striding over to me like he owned the place. I hated the sense of dread that crawled up my spine, but I reminded myself, "He's walking into your trap, Joel. Stay cool." He slid into the seat opposite me with a self-satisfied smirk. "You're punctual. I like that." I forced a tight smile. "Thanks for agreeing to meet. I want to clear the air." He glanced around, maybe noticing the refined clientele quietly chatting over cocktails and gourmet dishes. "Fancy place. You trying to impress me, or is this just your usual hangout?" I shrugged. I figured we needed somewhere discreet but comfortable. "Play the part," I reminded myself. "Sound cooperative, not triumphant." He snorted. "Right, so talk. What is it you want?" I leaned in, letting my voice tremble slightly. "I know you can spin whatever story you want about me and Julia. The tabloids would jump on it, especially after the wedding fiasco. I can't afford that negative publicity. So if you name a figure, maybe we can settle this quietly." His eyes lit up like I'd dangled gold in front of him. "I see. You've come to your senses." Inside, I felt a burst of vindication. He took the bait. Outwardly, I kept my face neutral, feigning reluctance. "Yes, well, you threatened me earlier, and I don't want a scandal. So how much do you want to keep your mouth shut? He leaned back, letting out a theatrical sigh. Well, I'm not a greedy man, but this little stunt you pulled dragging Julia into your lawyer's office, making her sign that confession makes me wonder if you've got something else up your sleeve. I forced a casual shrug. She signed that on her own. I just wanted to protect myself from her claims. That's separate from any damage you could do by going public. He smiled. Ah, so you're afraid I'll reveal the real you. Interesting. Let's cut to the chase, Brian, I said, letting a hint of impatience seep in. You want money, or you wouldn't have threatened me? So how much? He gazed at me, tapping his fingers on the table. A server approached, asking if we'd like drinks. Brian ordered a whiskey neat, while I asked for sparkling water. No sense clouding my mind with alcohol tonight. Once the server left, he leaned forward, voice low and full of condescension. I was thinking, 200 grand for starters. That should be enough to keep me comfortable while I invest in new properties. And I promise I won't say a word to the press or on social media about you or the fiasco with Julia. My heart slammed in my chest, but I forced my voice to remain steady. 200 grand is a lot for silence, Brian. He scoffed, swirling an imaginary glass. Chump change for a big-shot cybersecurity tycoon like you. Think of it as an insurance policy. Don't worry, I'm not asking for more than you can afford. I clenched my jaw. And if I say yes, you vanish? No more threats? No more contact with Julia? He chuckled. Oh, I'll vanish in the sense of not messing with your public image, but I can't guarantee I won't see Julia again. That's her call, not yours. He paused, savoring his little power trip. Of course, if you add an extra 50 grand, I'll even promise to stay away from her personally. Let you have your chance at reconciling with the little darling if you want. I swallowed the fury, threatening to boil over. Stay in character. Let's just handle one thing at a time. Our server returned with Brian's whiskey and my water. He set them down quickly, aware we were in serious conversation. Brian took a sip and exhaled happily. Now that's smooth. I nodded. So you're telling me if I write you a check for 200 grand, you'll keep quiet about everything, at least publicly. And if I tack on 50 grand more, you'll never see Julia again. He raised his glass in a mocking toast. You got it, big guy. Do we have a deal? My skin prickled at his arrogance. But I reminded myself that behind me, the detectives were listening. He was extorting me, plain and simple, referencing hush money. I just needed to get him to say it clearly for the audio. What exactly am I paying for? I asked, feigning confusion. Lay it out so there's no misunderstandings, he smirked. You're paying for me to withhold some stories I could share about you, how you manipulated Julia, how you threatened her. All nonsense, of course, but tabloids don't care. They'll run with it. Your name will get dragged. You'll lose business deals. So, yeah, you pay me. I keep my mouth shut. End of story. My gut churned with a mix of adrenaline and dark satisfaction. That was the admission I needed. This was game, set, match. I forced a stiff nod. All right, I'll pay. But I want it in writing that once I give you the money, we're done. No further demands. Understood? He waved a dismissive hand. Sure, sure. You can have your lawyer draft something. He squinted, noticing my tension. You look like you're about to pass out, Carter. Relax. 250's not that big a sum for you, right? I let out a shaky breath. I'll get the money, just don't make a scene. I reached for my phone, slipping it from the table. Let me text my banker. He nodded smugly, turning his gaze to the city lights outside, probably imagining what he'd buy with the payoff. While he was momentarily distracted, I gave the faintest nod to the detectives in the booth. They rose slowly, approaching our table. Brian turned when he heard footsteps behind him, his brow furrowed as they flashed badges. One of them, Detective Carter, said calmly, Brian McAdams, we'd like you to come with us. We have reason to believe you're committing extortion. Brian's face went slack. Then he turned to me with wide eyes. You son of a bitch, you set me up? I played an innocent shrug. I'm just protecting myself, Brian. Like you said, the tabloids don't care about the truth, so I made sure the police would. He stood up so fast his whiskey glass toppled, spilling amber liquid on the table. This is entrapment. You can't do this. Detective Rios produced a small digital recorder from his jacket. We have you on tape, sir. You're free to remain silent, but you might want a lawyer. Let's go. A hush fell over the lounge as other diners realized what was happening. Waiters paused, eyes darting nervously. Brian tried to push past the detectives, but they blocked him. Rios calmly guided him by the arm. He glanced back at me, pure rage in his eyes. I'll bury you for this, Carter, you hear me? I felt a surge of triumph. Good luck with that, I said. You're the one who just demanded 200 grand for your silence in front of the cops. He spewed curses as they escorted him out. The manager, Mr. Lyons, appeared beside me with an apologetic expression. Everything all right, Mr. Carter? Sorry about the disturbance. I gave a faint smile. No worries. Thank you for your cooperation earlier. I appreciate it. He nodded curtly, hustling to reassure the other patrons that nothing was amiss. The detective who remained behind Carter approached me. We'll take him into custody. This should be a solid extortion charge. We'll contact you with details. You can press charges or see how the DA wants to proceed. Thank you, detective, I said, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I'll do whatever I need to ensure he doesn't weasel out. He gave a quick nod. We'll be in touch. With that, he left to join his colleagues. I stood there for a moment, a wave of relief and adrenaline washing over me. Brian was taken away in handcuffs, or at least forcibly escorted. He couldn't threaten me with false stories. He couldn't keep exploiting Julia. Maybe I'd just struck the blow that ended his entire plan. I signaled the server, paid for the spilled whiskey, and left the Emerson Lounge with my heart hammering. As I walked to my car, I let myself grin for the first time in days. He tried to outsmart me, but that's the last time he'll underestimate Joel Carter. Back at my penthouse, I paced around the living room, half expecting Brian to kick down my door in a rage. It took me an hour to settle down enough to call Reed. I recounted every detail, adding the cops' reaction and how they'd arrested Brian on the spot. Reed chuckled with satisfaction. Couldn't have gone better if we scripted it. This time tomorrow he'll be facing charges. The extortion is on record, so he'll have a tough defense. Good. I want him feeling cornered, I said, flopping onto my couch. What about Julia? Should I let her know? He was silent for a beat. I mean, she might hear about it soon enough. She might even get called as a witness if the DA wants to prove a pattern of manipulative behavior. But it's your call. I closed my eyes. All right, I'll sleep on it. Thanks, Reed. When I hung up, exhaustion caught up with me. My eyes burned from tension, yet for the first time in weeks there was a lightness in my chest. Brian's going down. Maybe that made me vengeful, but after everything he put me through, I didn't care. As I drifted off, the last thought in my head was of him shouting threats while the detectives led him away, the perfect image of poetic justice. I woke the next morning feeling unburdened, at least slightly. Brian's arrest gave me a sense of closure. But as I soon discovered, the ripple effects of that night would be far-reaching, and not all of them would be under my control. Around 8 a.m., I was in the office, sipping coffee and casually scrolling news sites on my phone. That's when I saw the first headline. Local real estate investor arrested for extortion, connection to wedding scandal. My heart jumped. They'd wasted no time linking it to me. The article was short, mostly speculation. It mentioned Brian's name, that he'd been apprehended at a fancy restaurant, and that sources claimed it was related to hush money demands concerning a canceled wedding. My name wasn't mentioned directly, but it didn't take a genius to piece it together. The rumor mill was swirling. I sighed, pushing my phone away. I'd known media interest was inevitable, but it still stung to see it in black and white. At least it's on my terms, I told myself. He's the one being charged, not me. Heather knocked on my open office door, stepping inside. Joel, there are a couple of reporters calling. They're asking for a statement regarding Brian's arrest. I told them you have no comment. I nodded. Good. That's the line. No comment. She studied me, her sharp gaze flicking over my face. You sure you're okay? I'll survive, I said with a half smile. Thanks for handling them. She nodded and left, and I stared at my desk, the swirl of code and project proposals overshadowed by personal drama. My phone buzzed with a text from Reed. The DA's office wants a statement from you. They might file formal charges today. Let me know if you can come by to sign documents. So it was real and moving quickly. Better this than letting him roam free. I typed back a quick acknowledgement. Then I tried to refocus on work, flipping through a file about a new client's network vulnerabilities. But my concentration broke every few minutes as my phone lit up with more calls and texts, some from acquaintances, some from unknown numbers, all wanting to talk about Brian or Julia or the fiasco. I powered off my phone, telling myself I'd check it later. Enough was enough. By lunchtime, I felt restless. I wandered the corridors of the office, glancing into the glass-walled conference rooms where my team hammered away at cybersecurity solutions. Everyone seemed locked in on their tasks, occasionally offering me polite smiles. They probably knew about my personal meltdown, some even read the gossip or recognized the wedding news, but they also respected me enough not to pry. At the break room, I found Dawn leaning against the counter, stirring sugar into her coffee. She was still wearing the visitor's badge from the front desk, meaning she'd come to see me specifically. When she spotted me, she frowned softly. "Hey, Joel. I was hoping I might catch you." "Dawn," I said, giving a polite nod. "Everything okay?" She sipped her coffee. "I heard about Brian's arrest. Word spreads fast among real estate circles. A friend texted me about it, then the tabloids. Now it's all over social media." I sighed. "Yeah. He tried to extort me for money, so the cops intervened." She nodded, lips pressed into a firm line. "I can't say I'm surprised. He's always been scummy. I'm worried about how Julia's taking this. Have you talked to her at all?" I shook my head. "Not since she signed the affidavit. Why?" "She's gone off the radar. Her parents are freaking out because she didn't come home last night, didn't call, didn't leave a note. Some folks say she might be at a motel or staying with a friend, but no one's sure. Her phone's off." I felt a pang of concern, which I quickly tamped down. "She's not your responsibility," I reminded myself. "Well, if she wants to hide, that's her choice." Dawn glanced away, her voice dropping. "Look, I'm not asking you to run to her rescue, but she's not in a good place mentally. Brian's arrest might have triggered a crisis for her. You know how guilt and shame can eat people up." I rubbed my forehead. "I get it, but she burned all her bridges with me." Dawn blew out a breath. "I can't blame you. I still care about her. And I know, deep down, she did love you. She just let greed and fear twist everything." I rolled my eyes. "Well, that's on her." Then I paused, noticing Dawn's trembling hand around her cup. "You really are worried." She nodded slowly. "I've known her since college. Despite her mistakes, it's painful to see her crumble. If you hear from her or if she reaches out, can you just let me know? Or tell her she can call me?" I hesitated. "Sure, I'll do that." Dawn gave me a weak smile. "Thanks. And if you need a friend, I'm here. This whole thing is bound to get uglier, especially once Brian starts trying to cut a deal or spin the narrative." I exhaled. "Let him try. He's in custody now, so his leverage is gone." With a final nod, Dawn left the break room, her shoulders slumped. I stood there for a moment, staring at the coffee machine, thinking about how this fiasco had rippled out, hurting my life, hurting Julia's parents, hurting my friend Dawn. Collateral damage indeed. That afternoon, I went to Reed's office to finalize paperwork for the DA. They wanted an official statement from me describing Brian's extortion attempt. I gave them a detailed account, and they assured me it would be strong evidence alongside the recorded audio. The DA seemed confident they could charge Brian with at least one felony count, possibly more if they uncovered additional victims or attempts. Just as we wrapped up, Reed's secretary, Marnie, popped her head in. "Mr. Parker, there's a Miss Lopez on line 2. Says it's urgent." Reed and I exchanged glances. "Julia?" I breathed. It had to be. He picked up the phone and spoke briefly, then handed me the receiver. "She wants to speak with you. She sounds upset." I took the phone, my hand tense. "Julia?" Her voice came through shaky. "Joel, thank God you're there. I'm sorry, I tried calling your cell, but it's off." My gut twisted. "I turned it off because of all the unwanted calls. What's going on?" She let out a trembling exhale. "You got Brian arrested. Everyone's talking about it." "Did you really set him up?" I bristled. "He set himself up, Julia. He tried to blackmail me. What did you expect me to do, just hand over the money?" She sniffled. "I don't know. Maybe you could have just walked away. But no, you had to have him arrested. He's in jail, Joel. He might face real prison time." Am I supposed to feel sorry? I snapped. He was threatening me. He's not a victim here. She paused, then her tone turned pleading. I get it, I do, but I'm stuck in the middle. People are blaming me for turning him in, or for working with him. I lost my job at the real estate firm because the boss said the negative press is too much. My parents are furious with me, and I can't show my face anywhere without being called a con artist or a whore. I felt a small stab of pity. You brought this on yourself, Julia. Her voice cracked. I know, but I never thought it would explode this badly. Please, is there any way you can talk to the DA and lighten Brian's charges? If you do that, I can tell the public you forgave me, that we're good now. It might salvage both our reputations. I let out a humorless laugh. You want me to help your lover, former lover, avoid consequences for extorting me? So the public sees you in a better light? She hiccuped a sob. It's not just about me. Think about your image too. People see you as vengeful. If you show leniency, you'll look generous. That stung, but I refused to waver. I'm not in the business of turning the other cheek to criminals. Sorry. Joel, she whispered, voice trembling, I'm desperate. I've got nowhere to go, no job, and I'm being harassed online. Brian's friends blame me for selling him out. I don't know how to fix this. My anger warred with the faint echo of empathy. She sounded so lost, but I forced myself to be firm. That's not my responsibility anymore. I'm done cleaning up your mess. A silence stretched, filled only by her ragged breathing. Finally, she muttered, I guess that's my answer. Goodbye, Joel. The line clicked. I lowered the phone, feeling unsettled. She expects me to bail her out again? The nerve after everything. But she was truly in free fall, and I could sense the desperation in her voice. Reed cleared his throat. I caught bits of that. You all right? I nodded stiffly. I'll live. She wants me to help Brian. You believe that? Reed shook his head, eyes narrowed. Ridiculous. But it shows her mindset. She's scrambling, and she'll try anything or anyone for a lifeline. Exactly. I took a steadying breath. Well, I'm not biting. I left the office soon after, wanting to avoid further drama for the day. In my car, I powered on my phone out of curiosity. Over a dozen missed calls, unknown numbers, press lines, even a few from Julia's father, Victor. My voicemail icon glowed ominously. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. I dialed my mailbox, punching in my code. A robotic voice announced, You have 8 new messages. The first was a breathless woman from some gossip magazine, wanting a statement. Delete. The second was another reporter. Delete. The third from an unknown male voice, possibly a colleague of Brian's. He cursed me out, calling me a traitorous piece of shit. Delete. The fourth was from Julia's father. Joel, we need to talk about Julia. She's in trouble. Please call me back. That got my attention. The next few were variations of pleas or rants, culminating in one from Victor again. Joel, I'm worried about my daughter's mental state. She's not answering her phone, and last time I saw her, she mentioned not wanting to live with this shame. Please, if you have any heart left, call me. I closed my eyes, a spike of guilt lancing through me. Was Julia really suicidal or just being dramatic? I didn't want to be manipulated, but I also didn't want her to harm herself. Damn it. I took a moment to gather myself. Then I called Victor's number. It rang several times before he picked up. Joel? He said, voice rough. Thank God. You got my messages? I rubbed my temple. Yeah. What's going on with Julia? He sighed heavily. We had a fight last night after Brian's arrest made the news. She left, saying she couldn't face the world, that everything was destroyed. This morning she texted me once, said she was done with everything. And I'm scared she might do something stupid. My stomach flipped. Where could she be? I don't know. She's not at any of her friends' places, not at her old apartment. She's ignoring me. I was hoping you might have heard from her, or you could talk sense into her. She still loves you, despite everything. I felt a knot in my chest. Victor, I'm sorry she's in pain. But she crossed a line. I can't be her savior right now. He groaned. I understand. I'm not asking you to forgive her. But if you have any idea where she could be, you might save her life. I'm truly worried she's going to hurt herself. I swallowed, remembering Dawn's words about Julia being in a dark place. Let me think if there's anywhere she might go. Has she visited that Redwood motel? Or maybe another spot? He coughed. I guess she could. But do you really think she'd go there after everything? I shrugged, though he couldn't see me. I have no idea. Let me see if I can track her phone or something. Right away, I felt a moral conflict. Tracking her phone was an invasion, but under these circumstances, maybe it was warranted. Victor exhaled, relief creeping into his tone. Thank you, Joel. Please, if you find her, let me know. We hung up, leaving me with a swirl of emotions. Julia might be suicidal, might be hiding, might be lying. I had no clue. But I found myself unlocking my laptop on the passenger seat, activating a script that could ping her phone's last known location if the old iCloud credentials still worked. I typed in Candy Cane 22, feeling both shame and fear. Please, let her be okay. The location data was partial, her phone was off, so I only got the last place she used it. About 2 hours ago, near a rundown corner of town with cheap motels and payday loan shops. My chest tightened. That's not a good sign. I started the car and drove out that way, ignoring the voice in my head that said I was stepping back into her drama. Maybe it was the leftover sense of responsibility or old affection. Or maybe I just didn't want her blood on my hands if she really did something desperate. I arrived in a grim neighborhood, the streets lined with shuttered storefronts and graffiti. The mid-afternoon sun glinted off battered cars. I rolled past a couple of motels, scanning the parking lots for Julia's silver Lexus. Finally, I spotted it outside a place called Parkside Inn, a dilapidated 2-story building with flickering neon sign. This must be it. I parked, got out. The air smelled faintly of exhaust and stale grease from a nearby fast food joint. My heart pounded as I approached the manager's office. A bored-looking clerk glanced up. Rooms are $40 an hour or $70 a night. ID required. I'm not looking for a room, I said. I'm looking for someone, a woman named Julia Lopez. Dark hair, mid-20s, drives a silver Lexus. She might be in trouble. He eyed me suspiciously. We don't give out info on guests. Privacy policy. I reached into my wallet, flipping out a $100 bill. She's potentially suicidal. Please. He looked at the cash, then at me, then back at the cash. With a sigh, he took it, pocketing it quickly. Number 214, second floor. Don't cause trouble, or I'll call the cops. I nodded stiffly, heading up the cracked outdoor staircase. My nerves screamed at me. What if she's overdosing or... I pushed the thought aside. Reaching room 214, I heard no noise inside. I knocked. Julia, it's Joel. No answer. I tried the doorknob. Locked. I banged again. Julia, open up. Still nothing. My stomach twisted. I glanced around, saw no one, then braced myself and kicked the door near the latch. It burst open with a splintering crack, revealing a dingy motel room with a stained carpet and an unmade bed. My eyes darted around, searching for her body. For a nightmarish moment, I didn't see anyone. Then I spotted a figure curled in the corner by the bed, half hidden by a rumpled blanket. Julia! I rushed over, fear pounding in my temples. She lay there, eyes half open, tears staining her cheeks, an empty liquor bottle beside her. Several pill bottles scattered on the floor. My heart lurched. No, 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 I muttered, checking her pulse. It was slow but present. Her breathing was shallow. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911. As it rang, she stirred, murmuring something incoherent. Julia, stay with me, I said, voice shaking. The operator picked up and I sputtered an address and a frantic request for an ambulance, giving them the motel's location. Adrenaline shot through me as I tried to keep her awake. Julia, come on, open your eyes. She groaned, her eyelids fluttering. A wave of relief that she wasn't fully unconscious, but also terror that her body might be shutting down. I had no idea what pills she took or how much alcohol was involved. I tore open a window, letting in fresh air, then kneeled beside her, gently patting her face. Julia, you're going to be okay. Paramedics are on the way. Her lips parted, trying to form words. After what felt like an eternity but was probably 5 minutes, I heard sirens in the distance. I propped her head up, fighting the urge to scream at her for being so reckless. Instead, I forced calm. You're going to live, I whispered, brushing hair from her face. Just hang on. She coughed, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. Joel, I'm sorry, she mumbled. I didn't want to do this. I just couldn't see another way. My throat tightened. Shh, save your strength. Help is here. The door banged open again, this time by paramedics, who rushed in with a stretcher. They checked her vitals, asked me about what she might have taken. I gave them the pill bottles I found on the floor, some prescription anti-anxiety meds, others I didn't recognize. The paramedics exchanged glances that said, "This is serious." My heart pounded anew. They moved her onto the stretcher. One paramedic started an IV line, the other asked me routine questions. Then they whisked her away. I followed them out to the ambulance, ignoring the curious stares from motel patrons. As they loaded her in, a paramedic turned to me. "Are you a relative?" I paused, unsure how to answer. "I'm her fiancé," I lied. "I mean, ex-fiance, just someone close. Should I ride along?" He eyed me, saw my panic, and nodded. "Sure, but sit up front. We need room to work." I nodded, climbing into the passenger seat. As the ambulance sped off, sirens wailing, I stared at the dull city streets whizzing by, my mind reeling. Julia nearly died alone in a shitty motel. All the anger I'd felt, still there but overshadowed by raw fear and concern. If I hadn't found her in time, she might be gone. I dialed Victor on the ride, telling him we were en route to the hospital. He let out a tearful gasp of relief, promising to meet me there. Then I hung up and stared at Julia's motionless form through the small window in the back, paramedics administering oxygen. My entire body trembled. What if I'd come later? The question gnawed at me like a savage animal. I didn't have answers. All I could do was cling to the present moment. Stay alive, Julia, I thought, hating the swirl of conflicting emotions. She'd betrayed me, but I still didn't want her to die. At the hospital, I paced the waiting room after the paramedics rushed her into the ER. A nurse tried to ask me about insurance details, her last name, date of birth. I gave what I knew, then resumed pacing. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly, the tile floors squeaking under the footsteps of doctors and orderlies. The smell of antiseptic clogged my nostrils. Victor arrived, disheveled and wild-eyed. "Joel, thank God you found her. Where is she?" I gestured to the double doors leading into the emergency ward. "They took her in. They're pumping her stomach, I think. She was barely conscious." He swallowed hard, tears shining in his eyes. "I was so worried. I thought God, I'm so grateful you intervened." I nodded numbly, no words to say. We both sat in plastic chairs, waiting. He tried to make conversation, apologizing for Julia's actions, but my mind was elsewhere, locked on the image of her curled on that motel floor. Eventually, a doctor emerged, introduced himself as Dr. Patel, and said they stabilized her. She'd need to remain for observation, possibly in a psych ward if they deemed her a risk to herself. Victor buried his face in his hands, sobbing quietly. I stood there, somewhat detached but relieved. She was alive. That was enough for now. Dr. Patel allowed us a brief moment to see her, though she was only half awake and hooked to monitors. Victor hovered near her bed, tears dripping onto her blankets. I lingered by the door, arms folded, unsure if my presence would comfort her or just remind her of everything that led to this. She opened her eyes once, gazing at me weakly. Then she closed them again, drifting back into sedation. I murmured to her father, "Let me know if there's anything you need. I'll step out so she can rest." He nodded, his expression one of profound gratitude and sorrow. I left the room, the beep of the heart monitor echoing behind me. My chest felt tight, like I'd been holding my breath for hours. This wasn't how I expected my life to go. I was supposed to be on a honeymoon, or at least married by now. Instead, I was in a hospital hallway, feeling guilt and relief over saving my ex-fiancée from a suicide attempt spurred by her affair and subsequent betrayal. Reality was cruelly unpredictable. I returned to the waiting area where I bumped into Dawn, who'd rushed over after hearing from Victor. She looked frantic. "Joel, is she?" "She's stable," I said softly. "They're monitoring her." She exhaled shakily, tears springing to her eyes. "Thank God. You saved her, didn't you?" I grimaced. "I guess. I found her in a motel called 911. She was this close to—" I couldn't finish the sentence. Dawn grasped my arm, looking both grateful and devastated. I knew she was spiraling, but not this badly, Dawn whispered, voice thick. I can't thank you enough for helping her, Joel. I forced a wan smile, but inside I was drained. I only did what anyone would do. She shook her head, tears brimming. Not anyone. Most would have left her to rot after what she did. But you didn't. I shrugged, unsettled by the praise. I couldn't stand by and let her die, no matter how mad I am. Dawn wiped her eyes. That's the kind of man you are, Joel. Regardless of how she wronged you, you still cared enough. I said nothing, staring at the scuffed tiles. The complicated knot of anger and concern inside me churned. I didn't want to love her anymore. I didn't want to hate her either. I just wanted to be free of this burden. But it was never that simple. Several hours passed. Julia was transferred to a more private room once her condition stabilized. A nurse quietly mentioned they might hold her for psychiatric evaluation, standard procedure in overdose cases. Her father asked me if I'd stay to talk to her when she regained consciousness. I considered refusing, but some sense of responsibility or closure made me nod. Late in the evening, she finally stirred enough for conversation. Victor was at her bedside, gently stroking her hair. Dawn lingered near the window, eyes red. I hovered by the doorway, uncertain. When Julia's gaze flicked my way, I stepped closer. She opened her mouth to speak, voice raspy. Joel? I nodded, forcing a calm expression. Hey, how do you feel? She swallowed, her throat clearly raw. Terrible, tired, ashamed. I just stood there, not sure what to say. She exhaled shakily. Thank you for finding me. I guess I owe you my life. I shifted, unsettled. I did what anyone would do. Don't read too much into it. Her eyes flickered with pain. Right, of course. She closed her eyes, tears leaking out. I'm so sorry. For everything. I rubbed my face. I know. After a moment, she opened her eyes again, voice barely above a whisper. I don't expect anything from you now. I know you can't trust me, can't love me. I couldn't handle the guilt, the humiliation. Everything with Brian, the job, the scandal. It was too much. I sighed. You realize you almost made a permanent decision over a temporary crisis, right? She nodded slowly, lips trembling. I just couldn't see a way out. Victor cleared his throat. Julia, sweetie, you need to focus on getting better. We'll figure out the rest later. She turned her gaze to him, tears shining. I'm sorry, Dad. He patted her hand, voice thick. You're my daughter. All that matters is that you're safe. There was a heavy silence. I glanced at Dawn, who was quietly crying. The atmosphere was thick with raw emotion. I tried to muster empathy. She's not a monster. She's a flawed human who made terrible choices. That realization softened my anger, if only a little. Finally, I said, I'll let you rest. Victor, call me if you need anything. Dawn, take care. I stepped back, intending to leave. Julia's voice, small and hoarse, halted me. Joel? I paused. Yeah? She swallowed hard. I hope one day you can forgive me. Even if I never see you again, I just want you to know I truly regret every lie. My chest constricted. I gave a half nod. Focus on getting better, I repeated. Then I turned and walked out. Once outside, I breathed in the night air, leaning against the hospital's concrete wall. The moon hung overhead, barely visible through the city's glare. My mind buzzed with the weight of everything. I'd put Brian behind bars, I'd narrowly saved Julia from suicide, and I still felt no sense of final resolution. Reed texted me to confirm Brian's bail hearing was scheduled in a couple of days. Great. That meant more legal proceedings, more public drama. The press would smell blood in the water. Still, I told myself it was worth it to keep Brian out of my life for good. I climbed into my car, started the engine, and drove home, the streetlights flickering across my windshield. As I reached my penthouse, a wave of exhaustion slammed into me. I bypassed the kitchen, ignoring my growling stomach, and collapsed on the bed, fully clothed. My eyes closed, images of Julia's haunted face swirling behind my eyelids. I wanted to shut them out, but the guilt and pity lingered. She almost died, and maybe I was the only reason she survived. Sleep took me in fits, haunted by half-formed nightmares of wedding aisles, redwood motel rooms, and ambulance sirens. When dawn broke, I forced myself awake. Another day, another chapter in this twisted story. At least Julia was alive. At least Brian was in custody. Maybe that was something. Collateral damage, I thought. We were all battered, but still breathing. 2 days later, I found myself standing in a crowded hallway of the county courthouse, waiting for Brian's bail hearing. Photographers and local reporters swarmed, calling out questions. They recognized me, the jilted groom turned key witness in an extortion case. I kept my face stony and refused to answer their queries, letting Reed guide me through the sea of onlookers. It felt surreal. I'd always avoided the limelight, building my cybersecurity empire quietly. Now I was headline news. Wealthy entrepreneur's fiancée betrays him. Lover attempts blackmail. It sounded like a bad soap opera. Yet here I was, living it. Reed ushered me into the courtroom, a small space with wooden benches, a raised judge's platform, and an air of subdued tension. Brian was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit, wrists shackled. He still managed to look arrogant, scanning the room until his gaze landed on me. Hatred simmered in his eyes. I refused to flinch. The hearing was brief. The prosecution argued that Brian posed a flight risk and had a pattern of deceptive behavior. His defense lawyer insisted he was a reputable businessman with strong community ties. The judge ultimately set bail at a significant sum, $50,000 cash. Brian didn't seem pleased but maintained his composure. As we exited, a flurry of camera shutters erupted. I rushed past, ignoring the barrage of "Mr. Carter, do you have a comment?" and "Do you feel vindicated?" One reporter nearly shoved a mic in my face, but a bailiff intervened. I spotted Brian's lawyer hurrying him off to a side corridor, presumably to discuss how to gather the bail money. Reed guided me outside, where fresh air greeted us. "You did good," he murmured. "No need to stay. The formal trial date will be set soon. The DA has strong evidence, especially the audio recording." I exhaled. "Glad to hear it. I just want this over." He nodded. "We'll get there." I spent the next few days in a haze of waiting. I kept in touch with the DA's office, who confirmed that Brian did manage to post bail, meaning he'd be out of jail pending trial. That left a sour taste in my mouth. He'd likely be free to roam, though under certain restrictions. Meanwhile, I heard from Dawn that Julia was discharged from the hospital, placed on a short psychiatric hold for evaluation, then released. She'd moved back in with her parents temporarily, trying to get her life together, as Dawn put it. I felt relief that she was physically stable. Beyond that, I didn't let myself dwell on it. One morning, I was in my office when Heather knocked lightly on the door. "Joel, do you have a minute?" I glanced up from my laptop. "Sure." She closed the door behind her, stepping forward with a concerned expression. "I got wind of something from one of our new hires in marketing. Apparently, Brian's out on bail and spreading rumors that you're the real villain, that you forced Julia into some arrangement." I sighed heavily. I suspected he'd try that. "Any details?" Heather frowned. "He claims he has emails from you threatening Julia, basically painting you as manipulative. It's obviously a lie, but you know how rumors can stick. We've had a few client reps ask if everything's okay. They saw tabloid headlines referencing a dark side to the Carter empire. It's probably just clickbait, but I wanted you to be aware." I sat back, frustration seizing me. He's doubling down on the smear tactic. Great. Well, we have the real evidence, so let him spin nonsense. She nodded, but her face remained tight with worry. "Our PR consultant suggests you release a brief statement saying we trust the legal system and that any accusations from Brian are baseless. You don't have to do an interview, just a short, direct statement." I mulled it over. "Yeah, that might be wise. Put something in writing, keep it factual, no mudslinging. Let's do that." Heather gave a small smile. "I'll draft it, and you can review before we send it out." "Thanks." I gave her a grateful nod. "I appreciate you looking out for me." After she left, I slumped in my chair. Another round of public drama, courtesy of Brian. The trial wasn't even scheduled yet, and he was already trying to assassinate my character. I reminded myself that no rational person would believe him once the facts came out. But in the court of public opinion, truth often took a back seat to scandal. Time crawled, and eventually, the DA's office set a preliminary hearing date. They wanted me to testify about the night at the Emerson Lounge, the nature of Brian's threat, and how we recorded him. I dreaded going to court, but I was resolved to see this through. On a crisp morning, I arrived at the courthouse again, steeling myself for the onslaught of reporters. Reed walked beside me, offering calm reassurance. This time, a few uniformed officers kept the press at bay. We slipped into the courtroom, took seats in the front row behind the prosecution's table. Brian sat at the defense table, looking oddly smug. His lawyer, a sharp-looking woman named Miss Monroe, whispered to him occasionally. The judge entered, and the clerk called the case. The prosecutor, a methodical man named Jacobson, laid out the charges: attempted extortion, blackmail. He explained we had an audio recording of Brian demanding hush money. Miss Monroe argued it was taken out of context, that my invitation to settle things could be read as entrapment. The judge listened impassively. Then they called me to the stand. My pulse thundered in my ears as I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Sitting down, I gave my full name and occupation. Then the prosecutor guided me through the events that led to the recorded conversation. I recounted how Brian had threatened to sell false stories about me if I didn't pay. My voice was steady, though my palms sweated. Miss Monroe cross-examined me with pointed questions. Mr. Carter, isn't it true you orchestrated a sting to lure my client into making incriminating statements? I nodded calmly. Yes, at the advice of law enforcement, because he'd already threatened me. She tried to imply I was motivated by revenge, that I manipulated the situation to entrap Brian. I stuck to the facts. He threatened me first. I reached out to the police. They advised me. Finally, Miss Monroe hissed, "Isn't it also true your ex-fiancée was in a fragile state and you used that to your advantage, pressuring her to sign an affidavit?" Jacobson objected, and the judge sustained it, telling Miss Monroe to focus on the extortion charge. She backed down, shooting me a glare. My heart pounded with adrenaline. Nice try. After my testimony, the prosecution played the audio recording. The court filled with Brian's voice, crystal clear, demanding $200,000 for his silence. The judge listened, arms folded. Brian's expression soured. Miss Monroe tried to object again, calling it illegally obtained, but the judge overruled law enforcement had set it up properly. By the end of the hearing, the judge found enough evidence to proceed to trial. Brian's face looked pale as the judge announced the case would continue. I left the stand, exhaling a shaky breath as I returned to my seat. Reed gave me a subtle thumbs-up. "You did well," he whispered. I just nodded, relieved that step was over. Outside, reporters clamored for a statement. I gave none, letting Jacobson speak for the prosecution. He told them the evidence was strong, that the trial would likely lead to a conviction if Brian didn't plea out. Miss Monroe brushed past, guiding Brian, who refused to make eye contact with me. In the following days, rumors flew that Brian might seek a plea deal, possibly naming other victims or revealing more of his shady business deals. If so, it could lighten his sentence, but he'd have to fully admit guilt. That would vindicate me publicly, though I honestly didn't care about vindication as much as shutting him down. Amidst all this, I got an unexpected call from Julia's father, Victor, asking if we could meet for coffee. I was hesitant, but curiosity got the better of me. We agreed on a little diner near my office. When I arrived, he sat at a corner booth, looking older than I remembered, lines etched deeper into his face. He stood politely, extending a hand. "Joel, thank you for coming." I nodded, sliding into the booth. "How's Julia?" He sighed. "She's stable. She's living at home with us. Sees a therapist twice a week. She's not working right now. Nobody wants to hire her with the scandal around, but at least she's alive." I drummed my fingers on the tabletop, uncertain how to feel. "I'm glad she's getting help." He nodded. "Look, I know you owe her nothing. She betrayed you in the worst way, but I wanted you to know she's trying to make amends. She's told her therapist everything, from the affair to the scheme with Brian. She's apparently writing some kind of letter or public statement admitting her wrongdoing." I raised an eyebrow. "A statement?" "Yes," he said, clearing his throat. "She hopes that by coming clean publicly, she might help your image and show she's remorseful. Maybe it could help your case against Brian, too." I felt a pang in my chest. So she wants to publicly humiliate herself to ease my burden? Or is it a final attempt to salvage her own reputation? I wasn't sure. That's her choice, I replied. I'm not pushing her to do that. I know, Victor said softly. She wants to meet with you, if you'll agree. Just to apologize face to face. I stared at the table, recalling the hospital scene. I don't know if that's wise. I don't want to reopen old wounds. He looked pained. I understand. But she's insistent. She says she needs to look you in the eye and apologize, that it might help her move on. I hesitated, coffee growing cold in front of me. Let me think about it. He nodded. I appreciate it. And Joel, I'm truly sorry for everything. Julia's mother and I never wanted you caught in this mess. I gave him a tight smile. Life rarely goes as planned. We just do our best. We left it at that, parting with a stiff handshake. I drove back to my penthouse, mulling over the request. Part of me was done with Julia entirely. Another part felt maybe this was closure. She nearly died, she's paying the price. Maybe I should at least hear her out. But my anger lingered no matter how many times I told myself I'd forgiven or moved on. For now, I decided to push it aside. The trial was my priority. Brian needed to face justice. Then I could figure out if I wanted a final conversation with Julia. Weeks passed, and the legal machinery chugged along. The DA gathered more evidence, interviewing other alleged victims who claimed Brian had pulled similar stunts, luring them with property deals, then extorting them in various ways. It looked like the case against him was solid. If he didn't plead out, he'd likely face trial within the next month. In the meantime, I tried to refocus on my business. My staff did an incredible job maintaining operations, though we had some potential clients grow wary of the negative press. I assured them it would blow over once the courts convicted Brian. Dawn occasionally checked in, updating me about Julia's mental state. She said Julia felt a deep remorse and was writing that confession letter, though she wasn't sure if she'd publish it or just show it to me. I kept my distance, letting Dawn and Victor handle Julia's emotional journey. One afternoon, I got a surprise call from the DA's office. Brian's lawyer had approached them about a plea bargain. They wanted to reduce the extortion charge in exchange for Brian pleading guilty and paying restitution, possibly naming other conspirators. The DA asked if I'd be comfortable with a lesser charge if Brian publicly admitted guilt. I paused, thinking. A guaranteed guilty plea would spare me the stress of a trial, the repeated testimony, the possibility of Brian wriggling free with some cunning defense. On the other hand, a lesser charge might mean a lighter sentence, but he'd still have a criminal record, be forced to pay damages. Finally, I told the DA I'd support whatever path led to a certain conviction. I wasn't out for maximum vengeance, just justice and closure. They thanked me and said they'd keep me posted. That night, I stared out my penthouse window, city lights twinkling below. So many dreams had died in the last month, replaced by nightmares. Yet, ironically, there was a glimmer of hope. I'd survived the betrayal, protected my assets, and might soon see Brian publicly confess. Maybe then I can truly move on. Just days after I heard about Brian's potential plea deal, the official word came through. He agreed to plead guilty to a lesser felony charge of attempted extortion in exchange for dropping some additional counts. He'd serve a reduced prison sentence, likely a couple of years, and pay significant restitution to me and possibly others he'd swindled. The DA considered it a win, as it guaranteed accountability without risking the unpredictability of a jury trial. I received a formal letter detailing the restitution terms, a sizable sum that Brian had to pay me over time, plus a condition that he publicly admitted wrongdoing. His lawyer insisted on minimal public fanfare, but the statement would be on record, ensuring my name was cleared of any wrongdoing. When I read the letter, I felt a strange emptiness. So this is how it ends. Not with dramatic fireworks in a courtroom, but with a negotiated resolution. On one level, I was satisfied he wouldn't escape unscathed. On another, I still carried the emotional scars from his involvement in my near-wedding fiasco. Still, the closure was real. I updated Heather and Reed, telling them the settlement was set. We'd finalize it in a hearing soon, and Brian would be sentenced. My staff seemed relieved. No more media speculation. The so-called Carter Bryan scandal was winding down. One afternoon, Dawn texted me, "Julia wants to see you, please." I hesitated, but the next day I decided to meet her in a neutral setting, a quiet cafe near the park. I arrived first, my nerves knotted. Why am I even doing this? Possibly for closure, possibly to let her speak her piece. In truth, I still had a shred of care for her well-being, if not love. She entered wearing a simple sweater and jeans, hair tied back. She looked pale and thinner, her eyes carrying a somber weight. We exchanged a stiff hello, then settled at a corner table. The place was nearly empty, quiet jazz playing overhead. She sat gingerly, as if afraid to disturb me. "Thanks for agreeing to meet," she began softly, hands cupping a mug of tea. I noticed she wasn't wearing any makeup, which was unusual for her. The overall effect was raw vulnerability. I nodded, waiting. She inhaled, then started, "I wrote something like a statement. I want to give it to you. You can read it if you want or never read it. But it's everything I wish I'd told you from the start." She slid a folded paper across the table. I left it untouched for now. "All right." She lowered her gaze. "I can't undo what I did. I can't pretend it was a moment of weakness because it lasted months. I was seduced by Brian's smooth talk and the idea of easy money. I thought if I got you to invest in his deal, it'd help me achieve the success I always craved. I told myself it wasn't really cheating if it was business. Then it became personal, and I was too deep to climb out." Her voice trembled. "When you canceled the wedding, I felt like my world ended. But I still hoped I could salvage things. Then, of course, you found more evidence, and Brian's arrest followed, and you know the rest?" I nodded, my chest tight with memories. "Yes, I do." She swallowed. "I'm sorry about everything. The heartbreak, the humiliation, the money scheme. There's no excuse. I just want you to know I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not expecting a second chance. I just wanted to say it face to face." Her eyes glistened. A thick silence stretched between us. I stared at the swirl of foam in my latte. Finally, I spoke, voice low. "Julia, you hurt me more than I ever thought possible. You lied, cheated, tried to manipulate me financially. I'm still angry, though less than before. I'm mostly just exhausted." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I understand." I took a shaky breath. "I saved you at that motel because I didn't want you to die, not because I still loved you or anything. Maybe part of me will always care, but I can't see a future where we're together in any way." She pressed her lips together, nodding. "I get that. I don't deserve you." I let out a weary sigh. "I do hope you recover, get your life in order, but I can't be part of that process." She closed her eyes, tears dropping onto the table. "Thank you. I'm determined to get therapy, to rebuild. I might move somewhere else eventually. Start fresh." We sat in silence for a moment, the air heavy with regrets. Then I picked up the folded paper. "Should I read this now?" She shrugged. "It's up to you. It's basically a letter describing how everything unfolded, how sorry I am, and clarifying that you never forced me into anything. You can do whatever you want with it. Burn it. Keep it. Give it to the press your call." I slipped it into my jacket pocket. "I'll read it later." She nodded, wiping her face. "I guess that's all I needed to say. I'll go, unless you want to ask me anything." I shook my head. "No. Good luck, Julia." She stood, shoulders slumped, the weight of her mistakes etched on her face. "Take care of yourself, Joel." Then she walked out, leaving me alone with a half-drunk latte and a swirl of conflicted emotions. I stayed there for a while, letting the music wash over me. Finally, I pulled out the letter and read it. It was painfully earnest, describing how she got sucked into Brian's illusions of grandeur, how she hated herself for betraying me, how she now recognized I was the best thing that ever happened to her. She ended with, "I release you completely from any ties to me because I have no right to ask for your help or love anymore." I folded it carefully, tears stinging my eyes. "It's done, Joel," I told myself. "Let it end." The day of Brian's final sentencing arrived. I didn't have to attend since the plea deal was already arranged, but I chose to be there for my own peace of mind. The courthouse hallway felt strangely familiar, though the press interest had died down somewhat. Inside, the judge asked Brian to confirm his guilty plea. He stood in a neat suit, no more orange jumpsuit, hair slicked, face solemn. He admitted to attempted extortion, apologized to anyone he hurt, including me by name. It sounded forced, but I relished the moment. The judge sentenced him to 2 years in state prison, plus restitution payments. Brian's jaw tightened, but he nodded, resigned. He glanced at me once, a flicker of resentment in his eyes. Then the bailiff led him away. And that was that. I walked out into the bright sunlight, breath catching in my throat. 2 years isn't forever, but it's a real punishment. The restitution would help offset any business losses or reputational damage. More importantly, it signaled a sort of final chapter to this nightmare. I called Reed to confirm the details, then strolled to my car, feeling a cautious sense of relief. Heather texted me, wanting an update. Done. 2 years, restitution. She replied with a celebratory emoji. I let out a small smile. As I drove home, the city lights flickered to life in the dusk. My mind roamed over the events of the past weeks. Julia's meltdown, Brian's blackmail, the motel rescue, the hospital visits, the hearing, and now the sentencing. It felt like I'd lived a lifetime in a month, all for a wedding that never happened. I pulled into my building's garage, nodding at the security guard. Then I rode the elevator up to my penthouse. The place felt emptier than usual, though I'd lived alone for a while now. I flicked on the lights, set my keys on the counter, and stood by the window, gazing at the sea of buildings. I thought about how drastically my life had changed from the moment I got that anonymous text at the altar. The heartbreak was real, but I'd survived. I'd protected my finances, my company, my sense of self. Brian was behind bars, Julia was facing the consequences, and my name was more or less cleared. Was I happy? Not exactly. There was a wound inside me, deeper than I cared to admit. I'd wanted a life with Julia once, a family, companionship. Now I had to accept a different path. But I also had a strange sense of hope that maybe I could rebuild something healthier in the future, free from lies and betrayal. I recalled how, in the hospital, I told Julia to focus on getting better. She seemed to be doing that, in her own way. I silently wished her well, prayed she'd never again stoop to the desperation that nearly claimed her life. Turning away from the window, I resolved to keep moving forward. Heather and I had discussed expanding the company into new markets, maybe opening a West Coast branch. Dawn was starting a support group for people recovering from toxic relationships, which I might discreetly help fund. I wanted to do something positive with the leftover energy from all this chaos. I poured myself a glass of water, sipped it slowly, letting the city's glow reflect in the glass. For the first time in a while, the quiet felt peaceful rather than oppressive. Maybe this is what closure feels like, I thought. The memory of Julia's final letter flickered in my mind, those words about releasing me. In a way, that's exactly what I needed to release myself from the anger, from the need for revenge. Brian was done, Julia was on a new track, and I was free. A few days later, I found the courage to do something symbolic. I went to the bedroom closet where my wedding suit still hung, protected in a garment bag. I carefully removed it, ignoring the pang in my chest as I recalled the day I'd worn it. Then I packed it into a box, along with the fancy invitation that read, Joel and Julia, the guest list, and a copy of the canceled wedding contract. I sealed the box shut, labeled it with a marker, passed. I carried it down to the storage locker in the basement, placing it among other relics of my life. Maybe one day I'd throw it all out, but for now it felt right to tuck it away. Out of sight, out of mind, clearing room for new beginnings. Riding the elevator back up, I felt a lightness in my chest. The dust is settling, I told myself. Time to move on. I left off having tucked away my wedding relics in a basement storage locker, a symbolic gesture to finally move on from the betrayal and heartbreak. Brian was sentenced to 2 years in prison, and Julia was beginning to rebuild her life under her parents' roof, grappling with guilt and mental health challenges. With the legal battles behind me, I needed to breathe freely again, to find some new direction for my own life. Yet, as I soon discovered, the aftermath of such deep personal trauma doesn't dissipate overnight. In the weeks following Brian's sentencing, the local media circus began fading. The tabloids moved on to fresher scandals. The business sections that once hammered me with invasive questions about the Carter Bryan fiasco found new stories. At my cybersecurity firm, the staff sensed a shift in my demeanor. I was calmer, more approachable, even if still a bit guarded. Heather in particular seemed attuned to my moods, checking in every so often with that characteristic loyalty I'd come to rely on. It was a blustery autumn morning when she knocked on my office door. I was reviewing a potential acquisition. Our company had an opportunity to absorb a smaller competitor that specialized in proprietary encryption algorithms. My mind kept wandering to personal reflections, so I welcomed the interruption. "Joel," she said softly, stepping inside, "the investors are waiting in the conference room for your final word on that acquisition. But I wanted to see if you were up to it. You seemed a little pensive when I passed by earlier." I closed my laptop and offered a faint smile. "I'm good. I just have a lot on my mind." She studied me, her expression gently probing. "Is it about the expansion to the West Coast, or something else?" Ever since the fiasco with Julia, I'd toyed with the notion of opening a second headquarters in San Francisco or Seattle, somewhere that offered fresh markets and less personal baggage. The plan was halfway in motion, with a potential office space identified and staff candidates being scouted. But something inside me hesitated. Was I running from the city that held all these memories, or was I genuinely seizing a business opportunity? "A bit of both," I admitted. "The West Coast office is promising. Still, there's a voice in the back of my head asking if I'm rushing into it because of everything that happened here." Heather walked closer, her professional demeanor tinted with concern. "Even if it started as a distraction, it could still be the right move for the company. But you need to be certain you're doing it for the right reasons." I appreciated her candor. Heather was one of the few people I could count on to speak honestly. "You're right," I said. "Let's handle one thing at a time. First, the acquisition. Then I'll see about making a final decision on the West Coast plan." She nodded, satisfied. "All right, I'll let them know we're on our way. And Joel?" "Yeah?" I noticed a flicker of warmth in her eyes. "I'm proud of how you've navigated all of this," she said, voice quiet. "Not everyone bounces back with so much grace." My heart tightened. "Thanks, Heather. That means a lot." She gave a quick nod and slipped back into her poised, businesslike air. "Shall we, then?" We headed down the glass-walled corridor toward the conference room, where a cluster of prospective investors waited. My reflection in the polished floor caught my attention. I looked more assured than I felt inside. Fake it till you make it, Joel. The meeting was intense figures, graphs, profitability forecasts flying across digital displays. I guided the discussion, my thoughts pinned to the present moment. I'd spent years honing my pitch, my ability to read a room, to see the subtle shifts in posture that indicated interest or apprehension. Now it felt good to re-engage that part of myself fully, unencumbered by the drama that had weighed me down. When it ended, the investors left with smiles and handshakes, promising to finalize terms within a week. Heather and I lingered in the conference room, exchanging a triumphant glance. We'd secured a substantial capital injection, enough to fuel the acquisition and possibly jumpstart our West Coast expansion. As she gathered her laptop, Heather shot me a slightly playful grin. "Feels good to win again, doesn't it?" I let out a small laugh. "Yeah, definitely better than the last few months of personal chaos." We walked out together, and I found myself relaxed enough to mention something personal. "Heather, I've been meaning to ask, do you ever regret that you stayed with the company so long, through all this turmoil? You've had offers from bigger firms." She looked surprised. "Why would I regret it?" I shrugged. "I've dragged the company's name through the mud with the scandal. You've had to fend off reporters. Sometimes I wonder if you'd have been better off somewhere else." She paused mid-step. "Joel, I believe in this company. And I believe in you. Whatever personal storms you went through, you handled them as best as anyone could. Besides," she added, a hint of a smirk, "I've had more interesting experiences here than I might at some sterile corporate giant." A warmth spread in my chest. It was comforting to know not everyone had jumped ship. "Thanks," I said simply. She squeezed my arm, a quick, friendly gesture before heading to her office. I stood there for a moment, soaking in the sense of normalcy. This is what moving on might look like, I told myself. Small victories each day, supportive colleagues, a sense of forward momentum. The next afternoon, Dawn texted me about her healing group, a project she'd hinted at before. A supportive community for individuals recovering from infidelity, emotional abuse, or manipulative relationships. She asked if I'd consider attending a meeting or at least offering financial backing. I wasn't sure I was ready for group therapy sessions, but the philanthropic angle intrigued me. Maybe I can channel my experience into something that helps others. After some deliberation, I agreed to meet her at the local community center where she held weekly gatherings. It was a modest space with a circle of folding chairs, flyers on bulletin boards, and warm overhead lighting. Dawn greeted me at the entrance, grateful that I'd shown up. "This means a lot, Joel," she said, ushering me inside. "The turnout is small right now, but I think it could grow." I spotted half a dozen people chatting softly among themselves. They all seemed of varying ages, each wearing an expression that suggested they'd been through something painful. My stomach clenched a swirl of empathy and reluctance. Am I actually going to talk about my ordeal here? "Don't feel pressured," Dawn whispered, sensing my hesitation. "You can just observe, or you can share, whatever you're comfortable with." I nodded, forcing a polite smile. "I'll keep an open mind." She introduced me to the group as a supporter and someone who's been through betrayal. They offered sympathetic glances, and we all took our seats. One by one, participants shared their stories of heartbreak, messy divorces, manipulative ex-partners. The raw honesty in the room struck me. It was strangely comforting to realize how universal such pain could be, though it also felt invasive to sit among strangers discussing these deep wounds. When it came time for me to speak, I hesitated. "Hi, I'm Joel," I began lamely. "I almost married someone who cheated on me and tried to con me financially. I found out on the wedding day itself. It was brutal." I paused, scanning their faces. No one was judging me. If anything, they looked encouraging. I had to deal with not just heartbreak, but also legal battles. She had an affair with a man who ended up blackmailing me. So yeah, that's my story, more or less. A soft murmur of sympathy rippled around the circle. One older gentleman, Keith, nodded. "I'm sorry, man. That's tough." A middle-aged woman with kind eyes, Tessa asked, "Do you feel like you've moved on, or are you still in the thick of it?" I considered her question. "I'd say the legal part is resolved. The emotional part, I'm working through it. There are days I feel fine, like I've buried it. Other days, a memory will spark and I'll be furious or sad all over again. But I'm not drowning in it, so that's progress." Dawn gave me a grateful smile. "Thank you for sharing, Joel. That vulnerability helps set the tone for everyone else." The session continued, with me mostly listening. By the end, I felt oddly lighter. I didn't pour out my soul, but just acknowledging the pain in a shared space was cathartic. Before leaving, I slipped Dawn a small check, earmarked for renting a better meeting space or providing materials for the group. She thanked me profusely, eyes brimming with tears. In the parking lot, as I was about to drive off, she jogged up to my car window. "Joel, your presence here means a lot. But if it's uncomfortable, you don't have to come back. I won't be offended." I paused. It was uncomfortable, yeah, but maybe a little discomfort is good. I might come again if my schedule allows. She beamed. "I'd love that." I pulled away, feeling a small spark of hope in my chest. The group was raw, but it reminded me healing is a collective process. We mend faster when we realize we're not alone in heartbreak. That night, I sat on my penthouse balcony, reflecting on the day's experiences, progress with the company, a tentative step into Dawn's support group. My phone buzzed with an incoming call, private number. Usually I would ignore such calls, but a hunch made me answer. "Joel Carter," I said. A hesitant male voice spoke. Hi, Joel, this is Jeff. I work with McAdams Real Estate. I used to before Brian got arrested. We actually never met, but I got your number from an old networking event file. I hope it's okay I'm calling you." My stomach tensed. Anything related to Brian put me on alert. "How can I help you, Jeff?" He cleared his throat nervously. Just listen. I was a junior associate at Brian's firm. After he was taken away, the company basically crumbled. I was sorting through old records and saw some incriminating stuff. Not just about you, but other potential victims he extorted or threatened. I'm not sure who to give it to. The cops have most of it, but some materials were left behind. I figured it might be relevant to your case or restitution claims. My heart rate picked up. The DA's office has the main evidence, but if you have more, you might want to pass it along to them or my attorney. Possibly it could strengthen the financial restitution angle. He paused. Yeah, I guess so. But there's something else. I found a folder referencing, well, a possible investor from overseas. The language was vague, but it implied Brian was involved with shady financing. I just don't want to be caught in legal crossfire. Thought I'd give you a heads up. A wave of annoyance mixed with concern surged through me. Even behind bars, Brian's tangled web might cause more headaches. I appreciate it. Forward it all to my lawyer, Reed Parker. You can trust him. And Jeff, if you're worried about your own liability, talk to the DA or get your own counsel. I'm not sure what else to tell you. He breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you. I just didn't know where to turn. We exchanged contact details, and he promised to email everything to Reed. I ended the call, unsettled. When will Brian's specter finally vanish from my life? Then again, if there was more dirt on him, it might further justify the restitution. I texted Reed a heads-up, then tried to refocus on the night sky. My moment of peace felt disturbed by old shadows. A few days after that cryptic phone call, Reed confirmed that the materials Jeff provided mostly overlapped with existing evidence. However, there was a new lead about potential overseas accounts. The DA might investigate further to see if Brian had stashed money abroad. That wouldn't necessarily affect me directly, but if they uncovered hidden funds, it could expedite my restitution payments. A small silver lining, I supposed. Meanwhile, I busied myself with finalizing the encryption company acquisition. The synergy was strong. We'd gain specialized technology, and they'd gain the benefit of my firm's established clientele. On the day the deal closed, I invited the new team to our headquarters for a welcome reception. The atmosphere crackled with excitement. My staff was abuzz with the possibilities, overshadowing the painful drama of the last months. We had a small celebratory party in the main lounge area of our office. Refreshments, soft music, mingling employees. Heather, ever the organizer, made sure everything ran smoothly. Around 5 in the evening, we gathered to toast the new partnership. I stood at the front, raising a glass. My speech was succinct. I want to extend a warm welcome to the newest members of our cybersecurity family. Together, we'll push boundaries, innovate, and protect more clients than ever before. This merger isn't just about business, it's about combining our cultures and forging new connections. Here's to our shared future. Applause rang out, and I spotted Heather beaming. She knew how significant this moment was for me, the first major positive milestone since my personal life collapsed. As the group dispersed, she sidled up to me, clinking her glass against mine. That was perfect, she said. Short, sweet, genuine. I smiled, sipping my sparkling cider. Thanks for orchestrating everything. She studied me quietly for a moment. I've never seen you quite this relaxed. It suits you. A flutter of warmth spread through my chest. It feels good to focus on progress instead of heartbreak. She nodded, her gaze lingering. For a split second, an unspoken electricity passed between us like we were both aware of a growing closeness. But neither of us said anything. We were professionals first, after all. A subtle flush crept into her cheeks, and she pivoted gracefully to greet a new hire approaching us. The moment passed, but it left me with a faint swirl of curiosity. Could something be developing with Heather? The notion both intrigued and frightened me. Later that evening, after the party wound down, I lingered by my desk, scanning leftover documents. Heather stepped into the office, a shy smile on her lips. Need help cleaning up? She offered. I chuckled. I think the janitorial crew will handle the bigger stuff, but you can help me with these empty coffee cups if you want. We each grabbed a couple of cups. The office was mostly deserted, lights dimmed. A hushed sense of possibility hovered in the air. I felt the tension we'd ignored earlier return, swirling between us. Joel, she said quietly, setting the cups on a side table. About earlier, sorry if I made things awkward. I was just happy to see you celebrating again, after everything you've been through. You didn't make anything awkward, I replied, my voice a bit thick. I appreciate the positivity. You've been a rock for me, Heather, more than you might realize. She glanced at the floor, then met my eyes. There were times I worried you'd never climb out of that darkness. Not that I doubted your resilience, but heartbreak can crush even the strongest people. I nodded, swallowing. It almost did. I'm grateful I had a support system. A brief silence. Then softly she asked, "Do you think you'll ever be ready to date again?" I know that's a personal question and maybe it's too soon, but my heart thumped. The directness of her query caught me off guard. I haven't really considered it seriously. I mean, I'm not in a hurry, but maybe, eventually. She exhaled a tight laugh. I get that. Just promise me something. If you find yourself wanting to open up again, don't let fear of betrayal hold you back forever. You deserve happiness, Joel. The sincerity in her eyes nearly undid me. I reached out, hesitated, and gently squeezed her hand. Thank you. I'll keep that in mind. Her lips curved in a soft, understanding smile. That moment lingered full of unspoken possibilities. Then we both let go, stepping back into the comfortable realm of colleagues. She bade me good night, leaving me standing alone, heart pounding with the realization that maybe I was on the cusp of a new chapter, one that might include more than just professional success. That weekend, I took a rare break from work and decided to attend Dawn's support group once more. The last time I visited, I'd only shared surface-level details. This time I felt compelled to open up a bit more, to see if sharing might further lighten the residual burdens in my heart. The community center was bustling with a Saturday crafts fair, so Dawn had set up in a smaller room upstairs. About 10 people showed. Some recognized me from last time, nodding politely. Dawn greeted me with a bright grin, obviously pleased I came back. We settled in a circle, each on simple folding chairs. Dawn introduced the session's theme, finding space for forgiveness of yourself, of others. My stomach twisted. Forgiveness was a loaded concept for me. Had I forgiven Julia? On some intellectual level maybe, but the scars remained. Did I forgive myself for being blind to her affair? That was murkier. One by one, participants shared stories of learning to let go or struggling to. Some spoke of the emotional toll of resentment, how it poisoned their future relationships. I listened, feeling a pang of recognition. Then it was my turn. I cleared my throat. I've done a lot of healing since the last time I was here. The man who tried to blackmail me is in prison now, and my ex-fiancée is recovering from a rough patch. I found that revenge or justice didn't automatically bring me peace. It helped me feel safer, yes, but the heartbreak was still mine to carry. It didn't just vanish because my betrayers faced consequences. Someone across the circle murmured agreement. I continued. I realized I also have to let go of the guilt I felt for not seeing the affair. And the anger there was so much anger. If I keep clinging to that, I'm giving them power over my emotions. Dawn nodded encouragingly. Tessa, the middle-aged woman, asked gently, "So do you feel you've forgiven them?" I paused. I'm in the process. I can say I don't wish them harm anymore. But total forgiveness? That's a big word. I guess I'm closer than I was a few weeks ago, but it's still a journey. A man named Corey chimed in. Sometimes it helps to see forgiveness not as a gift to them, but a gift to yourself, an act of releasing the bitterness that keeps you chained. I took that in. Yeah, I can see that. It's definitely easier said than done, though. His expression was empathetic. For sure. We're all on that same road. The rest of the group nodded, and conversation flowed around strategies for letting go meditation, therapy, volunteering. By the end, I felt a sense of camaraderie I hadn't experienced in a while. We might have different stories, but heartbreak was heartbreak. There was solace in shared vulnerability. After the meeting, I lingered to help Dawn fold chairs and tidy up. She shot me a conspiratorial grin. You know, you're good at this whole open up and share thing. Maybe I should make you a part-time co-facilitator. I laughed lightly. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But I can see how this group helps people, me included. She gave me a playful nudge. Look at you, actually praising group therapy. Who would have thought? As we stacked the last chairs, I asked, "How's Julia doing, by the way? I haven't really heard much." Dawn's face softened. She's stable. Her doctor prescribed a combination of therapy and mild meds for depression and anxiety. She still feels a lot of shame, so she's not socializing much. I nodded quietly. That's understandable. Dawn hesitated. She asked me to tell you she's grateful for what you said at the cafe, that you gave her closure. She wants you to know she's focusing on rebuilding, maybe even planning to move out of her parents' place soon. A swirl of emotion flickered within me, relief, guilt, hope, sorrow. I'm glad she's moving forward, I said simply. Dawn touched my arm. She lost the best thing in her life and she knows it. But if there's a silver lining, maybe it's that you both learned lessons that'll help you avoid repeating this pain. I offered a tight smile. Yeah, that's the hope. She squeezed my hand briefly, then let go. We locked the community center behind us, stepping into the crisp evening air. The sky glowed with the last pink traces of sunset. Despite everything, I felt a sense of possibility in my chest. The future might still hold challenges, but for once, the path ahead seemed less tangled. Monday came, and with it a routine hustle at the office. After a morning of back-to-back meetings, Heather and I found ourselves going over expansions and budgets in my office. She wore a navy blazer over a crisp white blouse, her hair pinned back professionally. Yet there was a softness in her gaze when she looked at me, an unspoken familiarity that made my pulse skip. We wrapped up the budget talk, concluding that a West Coast branch was financially feasible if we timed it right. Heather tapped her tablet, summarizing our next steps. So if we finalize the location by next month, we can launch the new office by the start of the next fiscal quarter. We'll need a strong lead to oversee it, maybe someone from our current leadership. I swiveled in my chair, considering. We could promote from within, or we could headhunt, but I like the idea of someone who knows our culture. She smiled. Agreed, maybe Sam from product development, or Linda from DevOps. They're both promising. I nodded, mind drifting to a personal angle. Heather, how about you? Would you consider relocating? You're basically the backbone of this operation. She blinked, laughter escaping her. Me? I never really thought about living on the West Coast. My family's here, my life is here, but maybe. It depends on if you need me there or if you want me to keep the main HQ afloat. I felt a tinge of disappointment at the uncertainty in her voice. Right, yeah, no pressure, just a thought. Her eyes flicked to mine, a subtle tension. I'd consider it if it made sense for the company, or if there was something personal drawing me there. The air between us crackled with implication. My heart pounded. Heather, I began, then faltered, unsure if this was the right moment. She seemed to sense my hesitance, clearing her throat. Let's not complicate things. For now, we'll keep our options open. She forced a light laugh, standing. Anyway, I've got a meeting with the marketing team. Catch up later? I nodded, mustering a professional smile. Sure. Thanks, Heather. As she left, I felt a swirl of longing and caution. Maybe we're both testing the waters, waiting to see if we can cross that line between boss and colleague. The memory of Julia's betrayal still loomed, reminding me how dangerous it is to trust. But the quiet desire stirring in me refused to be ignored. That evening, I decided to blow off steam at a local boxing gym, a place I hadn't visited since well before the wedding fiasco. Physical exertion had once been my therapy, letting me punch out frustrations. I dug my old gloves from a closet, laced them up, and stepped into the dimly lit space that smelled of sweat and disinfectant. I paid the drop-in fee and found an empty, heavy bag in the corner. With each thud of my fists, I channeled the lingering anger, the heartbreak, the fear of trusting again. My muscles burned, sweat dripped down my temples. The rhythmic pounding lulled me into a meditative focus. Before long, a trainer wandered over. He was a sturdy, middle-aged man with a salt and pepper buzz cut. Haven't seen you here in a while. Everything all right? I paused, panting, gloves resting on my hips. Life got complicated. Needed to take out some stress. He gave a curt nod. Well, if you want a sparring partner or some drills, let me know. Name's Gus. I thanked him and resumed pummeling the bag. Eventually, my arms trembled from exertion and I slowed to a stop, breathing heavily. In the background, other boxers grunted and shouted. The clang of metal echoed. Strangely, I felt calm amid the chaos. The physical exhaustion grounded me. Heading to the locker room, I realized I was done punishing myself physically or emotionally. "You're allowed to find joy again, Joel." I told myself this, rewinding the day's tension with Heather. Part of me wanted to call her right then, ask her out for coffee or dinner that wasn't about work. Another part insisted caution. Not every risk ends in betrayal. In the steamy hush of the shower, I closed my eyes, letting water cascade down. Slowly, I decided, if I keep letting fear rule me, I'll never move on. Maybe I owe it to myself to see what's possible. My renewed determination to open myself to new possibilities didn't mean the past vanished. Brian's sentencing was final, but rumors and incomplete narratives still occasionally surfaced, especially online. Julia was picking up the pieces, presumably preparing to leave the city, though I only heard updates through Dawn. Meanwhile, my business soared, forging new partnerships and reestablishing a sense of confidence in the industry. Against this backdrop of professional success, a more personal venture slowly took shape, an unspoken pull toward Heather that neither of us fully acknowledged, but could no longer deny. Shortly after my boxing gym epiphany, I decided I needed a real break. I'd been working non-stop for months, ignoring the emotional toll. The thought of taking a solo vacation appealed to me somewhere quiet, where I could reflect without the daily grind or the overshadowing memories of that wedding fiasco. A few times I considered inviting someone along, but realized I needed solitude first, to ensure I was truly ready for new connections. A quick Google search led me to a lakeside cabin rental about 3 hours north of the city. The photos promised serene water views, wooded trails, minimal distractions. On a whim, I booked a week, letting Heather know I'd manage some tasks remotely. She seemed supportive. Before I left, I texted Dawn. "Going off-grid for a week, need downtime. See you when I'm back." She replied with a thumbs up and a "you deserve it." On a crisp Tuesday morning, I loaded my SUV with essentials: my laptop, a few books, groceries, and hiking gear. Then I set out, the city skyline shrinking in my rearview mirror. The drive felt cathartic, winding through farmland, occasional small towns, eventually ascending into pine-studded hills. This is it, I thought. A literal getaway from all the drama. The cabin was quaint wood-paneled siding, a small porch overlooking a glassy lake. I stepped inside, inhaling the aroma of aged timber. A stone fireplace dominated one corner, and big windows offered panoramic water views. I flicked on a light, though midday sun spilled enough warmth to make it cozy. After unpacking, I ventured down the path to the lakefront. A gentle breeze rustled the trees, the water lapping softly at a narrow dock. For a while, I just stood there, letting the calm seep into my bones. No horns, no phone buzzing, no random calls from lawyers or tabloids, just nature's hush. I needed this more than I realized. The first 2 days I spent mostly hiking short trails, reading on the porch, and occasionally checking emails to ensure the company hadn't imploded. Heather sent me updates. Everything was running smoothly. No crises. She seemed determined to prove I could trust her and the team. It felt good, letting go of micromanagement. On the third morning, I woke at dawn, brewed coffee, and wandered outside in sweatpants and a jacket. A thin fog drifted across the lake, the sun's rays painting it in gold. I sat on the porch steps, sipping the steaming drink, senses alive to every chirp and rustle. In that moment of stillness, a wave of clarity hit me. I've been so consumed by revenge, heartbreak, and protecting my reputation. I've hardly savored life. A part of me realized that letting Julia's betrayal define me was a form of self-imprisonment, no less confining than Brian's jail cell. Maybe the new chapter of my life demanded not just external victories, but also an internal relinquishing of the bitterness. Setting down my mug, I allowed myself to recall the good times with Julia. There were plenty before things soured. The laughter, the shared ambitions, the sense of partnership. Not all of it was a lie. Even if her final choices overshadowed the relationship, she had once brought joy to my days. A wave of sadness mingled with acceptance. She'd lost her way. We both paid the price, but that was behind me now. Dwelling on it forever would serve no one. Later, after a contemplative walk around the lake, I decided to check my phone. A handful of unread texts. One from Reed about a minor legal matter involving overseas accounts connected to Brian, apparently, nothing to worry about. Another from Dawn updating me that Julia had officially put her old apartment on the market, planning to move out of state soon. My chest tightened but then relaxed. She's really going. The last message was from Heather, simply reading, "Everything's smooth here. Hope you're having a restful time. Miss your presence in the office, somehow quieter without you. Take care." A small smile tugged at my lips. She misses me. I typed a reply. "Surprisingly tranquil out here. Next time, maybe you should come for a day trip, though you might not find any local Starbucks." I hesitated, then pressed send. It was a casual invitation, not a direct proposition, but it carried a hint of interest. My heart thumped as if I'd taken a bold step. She responded an hour later, "As long as there's coffee, I'll survive. Enjoy every second there. You deserve it." No direct acceptance of the invite, but not a refusal either. I told myself not to read too much into it. We were both professionals. Still, a glow settled in me. That evening, I grilled some fish on the porch, the sky streaked with orange and purple. I found myself humming an old tune, a sign of contentment I hadn't felt in ages. I watched night descend over the water, stars emerging like glitter. Maybe I am healing, I thought, a subtle joy kindling in my chest. On my 5th day at the cabin, a knock sounded on the door around mid-morning, startling me. I wasn't expecting visitors, and the nearest neighbor was half a mile away. Setting aside my laptop, I cautiously opened the door. My jaw dropped. There stood Heather, wearing jeans, hiking boots, and an apologetic smile. "Surprise," she said softly, her cheeks tinted with embarrassment. "I hope you're not mad I came unannounced. I had a free day and no major crises at the office. Thought I'd see if you wanted some company." I stared, heart hammering. "I'm not mad, just shocked. Come in." She stepped inside, glancing around the cozy interior. "This place is nice. The porch alone is worth the drive." I laughed, still reeling. "How'd you even find it?" "You left a reference to Lake Kellum in a note on your desk. It wasn't hard to guess you might be at one of these cabins. I asked Dawn if she had any clue, and she vaguely mentioned your getaway." I took a leap. A swirl of warmth and nerves flooded me. Was this a purely friendly gesture or something more? Trying not to overthink, I gestured for her to sit. "Would you like coffee?" She nodded, eyes darting around as if she too felt the tension. "Sure." We settled on the porch, mugs in hand, the lake shimmering beyond. For a while, we sipped in comfortable silence. Then she let out a soft sigh. "Joel, I didn't mean to intrude on your solitude. I just found myself wanting to see how you were doing. Being in the office felt empty." I swallowed. "I'm honestly happy you came. I was starting to get cabin fever anyway." Her eyes sparkled. "So, no regrets about me crashing your retreat?" "None," I answered quietly. She gazed at the lake. "This is gorgeous, peaceful. I can see why you needed it." I nodded, mind racing. The hush of the forest enveloped us, but inside my chest was a storm of questions. Should I tell her how I feel? That I might be ready for something beyond friendship? As if reading my thoughts, she ventured, "Joel, I hope this doesn't sound out of line, but with everything that's happened, Julia, the scandal, your heartbreak, have you considered giving love another chance someday?" My breath caught. "I have," I admitted slowly. "I won't lie, I'm scared, but I also know I can't let fear dominate my life forever." She set her coffee down, turning slightly to face me. "Scared is normal. I get it. But sometimes you have to risk it. Otherwise, you stay stuck." A wave of emotion rose in me. Are we talking in general or specifically about us? A fleeting vulnerability crossed her face. She looked down at her hands. "Honestly, I'm not sure. Maybe both. We have a good working relationship. We're friends. I don't want to jeopardize that. But there's something else here, right?" My chest tightened, but I forced myself to speak truthfully. "Yes, I feel it too. And it worries me I can't lose your friendship or disrupt our company dynamic, but I'd be lying if I said I haven't thought about us, in a more personal way." She swallowed, eyes flicking up to meet mine. "Me too." A hush fell, broken only by the gentle breeze through the pines. My heart drummed in my ears. I reached out, tentatively covering her hand with mine. She didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers curled, intertwining with mine. "Maybe we take it slow," I whispered. "No big declarations, no rush, just see where this leads." She exhaled softly, relief and something like happiness lighting her expression. "I'd like that." We sat there, hands joined, gazing at the lake as morning light danced on the rippling surface. It felt surreal, this warmth blossoming in the aftermath of heartbreak. I thought of how different my life might have been had I actually married Julia. No point dwelling on that. Here and now was something fragile, genuine, and it felt right. Heather ended up spending the rest of the day with me at the cabin. We walked a forest trail, admired autumn leaves shimmering red and gold. Conversation flowed easily, business merges, personal anecdotes, gentle teasing about each other's coffee addictions. There was a new undercurrent between us, an awareness that we were stepping beyond the boss-coup boundary. At one point, we paused by a scenic overlook, the lake far below. She slipped her hand in mine again, a small but meaningful gesture. I looked at her profile, elegant features, eyes shining with a mixture of excitement and nerves. My heart glowed. Maybe this is how real healing happens, in small, brave steps forward. We returned to the cabin for an early dinner, working together to chop veggies and grill chicken. The atmosphere was domestic, yet tinged with butterflies. Neither of us tried to define what was happening. We simply enjoyed each other's presence. Later, as dusk settled, we lit a small fire in the fireplace. I half expected something more dramatic to happen, a sudden kiss or a bold confession. But we were both cautious, having glimpsed the fallout of rushed relationships. Still, the closeness was unmistakable. Eventually, she confessed she'd booked a room at a nearby inn for the night, not wanting to impose on my cabin. I offered her the guest room, but she insisted on giving me my space. "This is your retreat, after all," she said, though her eyes hinted she might have agreed if we were further along in trust. Before she left, we stood by her car. She gazed at me in the hazy moonlight, lips parted as if to say something. Instead, she leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to my cheek. My pulse hammered. "Thank you for letting me share a piece of your solitude," she whispered. I swallowed, a surge of tenderness flooding me. "You're welcome any time, Heather." She smiled, climbed into her car, and drove off into the night. I watched until her taillights vanished among the pines, heart soaring with the realization that life could indeed offer second chances at genuine connection. When Heather was gone, I returned to the porch, awash in a blend of excitement and introspection. The spark between us was undeniable, but so were the risks. What if things go wrong? What if it complicates the company? Am I truly ready to trust again, or am I just hungry for affection after so much loneliness? Sipping tea, I recalled that early stage with Julia, how everything seemed perfect before illusions shattered. But Heather wasn't Julia, and I wasn't the same naive man who believed love conquered all. This time I'd be more vigilant, more communicative. If we moved forward, it would be built on honesty, not illusions. The following morning I texted Heather, "Thank you for yesterday, I'm glad you came." She replied almost immediately, "So am I. Let's talk more when you're back." My chest fluttered. Yes, definitely. On my last day at the cabin, I took one final long hike around the lake's perimeter, letting the calm scenery imprint on me. The trees were beginning to shed leaves, scattering red and yellow confetti underfoot. I thought of the cyclical nature of seasons, how every autumn signaled an end, yet also preceded renewal in spring. My heartbreak was a kind of autumn stripping away illusions, leaving me bare. But maybe now the seeds of something new were germinating. Back at the cabin, I tidied up, packed my belongings. The caretaker came by to retrieve the key. She was a cheerful older woman who asked politely if I'd enjoyed my stay. I told her it had been exactly what I needed. As I drove away, a pang of wistfulness tugged at me. But overshadowing it was a sense of readiness to return, not as the broken man who fled the city, but as someone reclaiming his life. The drive back flew by. I found myself humming along to old rock tunes on the radio, the farmland scenery blurring past. I arrived at my penthouse in the late afternoon, greeted by the quiet hum of the building's furnace and a neat stack of mail outside my door. Everything looked the same, yet I felt changed. Dropping my suitcase, I quickly scanned the mail, mostly junk and a few business letters. One caught my eye, an envelope from the Lopez family. Surprised, I tore it open. Inside was a formal invitation with swirling script. Joel Carter, you're cordially invited to a farewell gathering for Julia Lopez, who will soon relocate to a new city for a fresh start. Date: next Saturday. Location: Victor Lopez's home. A short handwritten note added, "We'd be honored if you attend to show that all grudges are laid to rest. Sincerely, Victor and Marta Lopez." My stomach twisted. A farewell party for Julia? Did they truly expect me to come? And if so, for what reason to prove I forgave her? The notion was both admirable and unsettling. I don't owe them that. But a part of me recognized the gesture. A chance to publicly bury the hatchet, possibly giving Julia closure in front of family and friends. Could it help me too? I set the invitation aside, uncertain. Then I texted Dawn. "Got an invite to Julia's farewell. Are you going?" She responded swiftly, "Yes, she's determined to leave on good terms. Up to you, but it might be healing for everyone." I sighed. Healing. Right. I was all about healing these days, but confronting that emotional minefield in a crowded house seemed daunting. One step at a time. The week passed in a blur of re-entry into the office routine. I updated my staff on the next phase expansion, chatted with Heather under a new, subtle tension. We didn't address the personal shift openly, but the glances, the private smiles, the occasional text flirtations said enough. It felt exhilarating yet fragile, like a budding seedling we nurtured quietly in the soil, not ready for sunlight. Meanwhile, the farewell invitation loomed in my mind. Dawn texted me occasional updates. Julia was packing, finalizing a job lead in another state. She sounded determined to start over. Am I strong enough to stand in the same room with her, to wish her well, to close this chapter with grace? That Friday, as I finished some after-hours work, Heather popped into my office. "Still here? Go home, Joel," she teased. I rubbed my eyes. "I will soon, just tying loose ends." She paused by my desk, reading my pensive expression. "Everything okay?" I hesitated, then showed her the invitation. "Julia's father invited me to her farewell. I can't tell if it's wise to go." Heather's eyes flicked over the card. "Do you want my honest take?" "Always." She pulled up a chair. "If you feel it might help you fully close that door seeing her in a non-confrontational setting, maybe even extending an olive branch, then go. But if it's going to rip open wounds you've tried to heal, don't force it." I sighed, staring at the invitation's fancy script. "I've come a long way. I'm not sure there are wounds to rip open. I guess I'm just anxious about the weirdness of everyone looking at me, the jilted groom." She placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You can handle it, and if it's too uncomfortable, you can leave, but maybe showing up affirms you're truly past the bitterness. You might find relief in that." Her gentle touch radiated warmth. I reached up, briefly covering her hand with mine, gratitude in my eyes. "Thanks, Heather. You always know how to cut through my overthinking." She smiled softly. "I try. Now go home, and if you decide to attend, I have faith you'll handle it gracefully." She left me with a comforting sense of clarity. Maybe I did want to close that chapter with dignity. I packed my briefcase, switched off the lights, and headed out, the invitation tucked in my pocket. Tomorrow is Saturday. If I go, I go. If not, so be it. Saturday arrived with a swirl of autumn leaves dancing in the wind. The farewell gathering was set for late afternoon at Victor Lopez's suburban home. By noon, I still hadn't decided if I'd show. I did some work emails, paced my penthouse, turned on the TV only to switch it off again. My gut churned with indecision. Why am I so hesitant? Maybe Heather's right. It could be the final push I need. Around 2 in the afternoon, I steeled myself, showered, dressed in smart, casual attire slacks, a button-down shirt. I'll go. I'll stay for a polite amount of time, say my piece, and leave. I texted Dawn. "I'm coming." She replied with an exclamation point and a thumbs up. The drive out to Victor's place took about 40 minutes, winding through tree-lined suburbs. Every block had pumpkins and Halloween decorations, reminding me how time had marched on since that wedding day meltdown. As I pulled into the Lopez driveway, I noted the row of parked cars, from which I recognized a few Julia's relatives, perhaps, or old mutual friends. My pulse thudded. "You can do this, Joel." I stepped out, heart pounding. The crisp air smelled of bonfires. From inside, I heard muffled conversation. The house was modest but welcoming, decorated in autumnal wreaths. Just as I approached the door, it swung open. Dawn stood there with a broad smile. "You made it," she whispered, pulling me into a quick, supportive hug. "How do you feel?" "Like I could sprint back to my car," I joked half-heartedly. She chuckled. "Come on, I'll walk you in." Julia's in the living room, but there are plenty of people to buffer if it gets awkward. We entered, the warmth of the house enveloping me. Soft music played, and groups of people chatted, some sipping cider. I spotted Julia's parents near the kitchen, greeting guests. The father, Victor, looked up, caught sight of me, and his face lit with relief. "Joel!" he called, weaving through the small crowd to clasp my hand. "I'm so glad you came. It means a lot to us." I mustered a polite nod. "Thanks for inviting me. I wasn't sure if—" He squeezed my hand. "No, we truly want this. The past is the past. Let's move forward with goodwill." His eyes glistened as he directed me toward the main gathering. "Marta's in the dining room if you want to say hello. Julia's, in the living room. Take your time." I forced a breath, navigating the throng of acquaintances. Some recognized me, offering polite greetings, subdued curiosity in their eyes. I recognized a few from the aborted wedding ceremony. I tried not to recall the shame and confusion of that day. Marta, Julia's mother, approached with a gentle smile. "Hello, Joel," she said, voice trembling slightly. "Thank you for coming. You look well." I nodded, feeling a swirl of emotion. "I'm doing better, yes." She touched my arm delicately. "Julia's in the living room with a few friends. She wants to see you, but if it's too uncomfortable, I understand." I steadied myself. "I'll talk to her. It's fine." Marta's eyes sparkled with gratitude. "Bless you, Joel." I made my way to the living room. The chatter hushed a bit when I stepped in. Julia stood by a side table, flipping through photos with two older relatives. She wore a simple dress, her hair tied back, slimmer than I remembered, but seeming composed. She glanced up, saw me, and her expression froze in a mixture of surprise and relief. "Joel," she said softly, stepping away from her companions. She approached, folding her hands before her. The hush in the room grew, watchers uncertain. She cleared her throat. "Could we speak privately for a moment?" I nodded, grateful for the chance to avoid an audience. She led me down a hallway into a small den, closing the door behind us. The space was lined with books, a desk, and a sofa. My heart thumped as I faced her. Up close, I saw faint shadows under her eyes, signs of the turmoil she'd been through. "Thank you for coming," she began, voice steady but subdued. "I wasn't sure if you would." I inhaled. "I almost didn't, but like your father said, I'd like to move forward." She offered a tentative smile, sadness etched beneath it. "I'm leaving next week. I found a job in Colorado administrative work for a property management firm that doesn't mind my history. My parents offered to help me settle there." "That's good," I replied. "A fresh start." She nodded, exhaling shakily. "Yeah, I can't keep avoiding life forever. I have to rebuild." She fiddled with her hands. "I just wanted a chance to say goodbye properly, to show everyone, including you, that I'm not running away from my mistakes, I'm facing them, then stepping forward." My throat tightened. "I understand." She swallowed. "Joel, I don't expect your forgiveness, but I do hope you realize how sorry I am, how deeply I regret hurting you." I studied her face. Her remorse seemed genuine, not the manipulative tears I'd seen months ago. She'd been through the ringer losing her career, dealing with depression, almost taking her own life. Even if the heartbreak she caused was real, I no longer felt the raw anger. She's a wounded soul, like me, trying to piece things together. In a calm voice, I said, "Julia, what you did was devastating. It took me a long time to claw my way out of that pain, but I don't hate you. I wish you well. I hope you find peace and honesty in your new life." Her lip quivered. "Thank you," she whispered, tears gathering. "That means more than you know." A gentle wave of relief washed through me, a sense of finality. We stood there for another beat, letting the moment settle. Then she composed herself. Should we go back? People might be wondering if we killed each other. I let out a small laugh, unbelievably, a real, amused exhale. Yeah, let's spare them the speculation. She managed a teary smile, and we headed back to the living room. Word of our private conversation apparently spread fast, because when we emerged, the atmosphere felt lighter. Some tension in the crowd dissolved. Dawn flashed me a thumbs up from across the room, clearly pleased that the talk hadn't ended in disaster. I accepted a glass of punch from an aunt of Julia's who introduced herself as Aunt Felicia. She apologized for being nosy, but then told me she admired my bravery in showing up. It was almost surreal, being praised in the same living room that might have seen me as the scorned fiancé months ago. But it was also comforting, like we were collectively rewriting the ending of a tragic story, turning it into something more redemptive. Julia circulated among the guests, receiving farewells and well-wishes. She didn't cling to me or try to monopolize my attention. Occasionally, our eyes met, exchanging small nods of mutual respect. So this is closure quiet, understated, but real. Near the buffet table, Victor cornered me, looking emotional. Son, he said, clearing his throat, I can't thank you enough for showing such grace. I know my daughter betrayed you. Seeing you here, offering kindness, I'm deeply grateful. I felt a rush of compassion for the man. He'd watched his daughter nearly destroy herself. It's okay, Victor. We've all had a tough road. She's paying her price, and I'm rebuilding my life. This farewell might be the last piece of closure we both need. He pressed his lips together, fighting tears. You're a good man, Joel. I wish things had turned out differently, but I'm relieved we can part on better terms. We shook hands firmly, a sense of final goodwill passing between us. I realized, for all the pain, there was an undeniable sense of humanity bridging the gaps. No more anger, no more illusions, just acceptance. After an hour of polite mingling, I felt ready to leave. I'd done what I came to do, offer a peaceful goodbye, demonstrate that my life wasn't stuck in that moment of betrayal. Dawn caught my arm by the front door, hugging me tight. I'm so proud of you, she murmured. You've come a long way from that day you stormed out of the wedding. I let out a wry chuckle. Feels like another lifetime. She grinned, stepping back. It does. And now you get to live your best life, free of the past. As I stepped onto the porch, I noticed Julia leaning on the railing, gazing at the sunset. She glanced over, offering a soft wave. I waved back, then walked to my car. My heart felt strangely light, as if a heavy chain had been unlocked from around it. Time to head home, to the future awaiting me, whatever that might look like. The next morning, I woke with a clear head. No nightmares, no lingering regrets. For months, I'd harbored tension about a potential confrontation with Julia. Now that confrontation had happened, and it wasn't explosive or painful, just two flawed people acknowledging their past, then parting ways. This is what final closure feels like, I mused, sipping my coffee by the window, the city skyline unfolding outside. Feeling a surge of optimism, I texted Heather. Mind meeting for lunch today? I'd love to catch up. She replied promptly, Sure thing. How about the bistro near our building at 1 p.m.? I grinned at my phone. Perfect. That midday break felt symbolic, like I was choosing to move forward with my life in a tangible way. The bistro was a quaint, upscale place with a minimalist design, crisp white linens, and modern art on the walls. Heather arrived before me, sitting at a small table near a window. She wore a patterned blouse, hair loose around her shoulders, and her eyes lit up when she saw me. Joel, she said warmly, standing to greet me with a light hug. I inhaled the subtle perfume she wore, feeling a flutter in my chest. We took our seats, ordering sparkling water and glancing at the menu. How was your weekend? She asked, a hint of curiosity behind her calm tone. I hesitated, not sure if she knew about Julia's farewell. Actually, I went to see Julia. It was her goodbye party. She's moving. Heather's brows rose slightly, but she didn't look shocked. Oh? How was that? I leaned forward, voice low. Surprisingly cathartic. No drama, just a peaceful goodbye. I feel lighter. A genuine smile spread across her lips. I'm glad. You deserve that peace. We chatted casually about the company, about expansions, about Dawn's support group. But there was an unspoken question hanging between us. What's next for us personally? Finally, as our entrees arrived, I cleared my throat. Heather, can I be frank about something? She set down her fork, meeting my gaze. Of course. I inhaled. I value our friendship and our working relationship. I don't want to jeopardize either, but I also can't deny that I'm drawn to you romantically. A faint blush colored her cheeks. I feel the same. She paused, searching for words. It's just tricky, isn't it? We work together at the highest levels. There's a power dynamic, though I'd argue we're equals in many ways. I nodded vigorously. Exactly. I'm not your boss in the sense that I treat you as a co-leader of the company, but the optics could be complicated. And after everything with Julia, she reached across the table, placing her hand lightly on mine. We can navigate it. If we're open, transparent, and professional, it can work, but only if we both want to try. My heart thumped with relief. I do want to, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep things above board. If it ever becomes an issue, we'll figure out a solution like restructuring roles or something. She nodded, smiling. Agreed. We can take it slow, see how it feels, and keep the lines of communication open. A wave of warmth spread through me. That sounds like a plan. The conversation shifted back to lighter topics, but the mood was electric, like we'd broken through a barrier. This is real, I thought, studying her kind eyes. It's scary, but I'm ready. Over the next couple of weeks, Heather and I quietly explored our budding relationship outside the office. We grabbed coffee on weekends, caught a movie one evening, and spent Sunday strolling through an art museum. Each outing felt like peeling back a layer of each other's personality, learning that she loved Impressionist paintings, that I had a secret fondness for classic jazz. We kept a low profile, not wanting to fuel gossip. The company was stable, thriving, and we didn't want to overshadow that with personal drama. Meanwhile, I tidied up the last remnants of the wedding fiasco. The event planners finally settled refunds and leftover bills. My father's old friend who'd contributed to the wedding sent a kind note. I'm sorry it didn't work out, but I see you're forging a new path. Wishing you all the best. It was like crossing off items from a painful to-do list, each checkmark freeing me further. Julia's father, Victor, sent a final text saying Julia had arrived safely in Colorado. She found a small apartment, started training at her new job, and sounded hopeful. I replied with a polite, glad to hear, wishing her well. Then I deleted the conversation thread, feeling it was time to let that chapter rest permanently. One Tuesday night, after a long day at work, Heather and I ended up ordering takeout in my penthouse. We spread containers of Thai food across the kitchen island, jazz playing softly on my speaker. Over dinner, we chatted about an upcoming project pitch. Then conversation meandered to personal territory. Leaning on a bar stool, Heather sipped her iced tea. You've really turned a corner. You're more relaxed, more open like the Joel I heard stories about from your old friends, the one who used to be unstoppable before heartbreak. I looked at her, a soft grin tugging my lips. Maybe heartbreak shaped me too. I might never be the naive optimist I once was, but hopefully I'm wiser. She nodded, then set her glass down. A serious note crept into her voice. I like wise Joel, but I also want to ensure we never bury the fun side of you again. I remember seeing glimpses of it during office celebrations back in the day, before Julia's betrayal overshadowed everything. I exhaled, dropping my gaze to the half-finished pad thai. Thanks for reminding me. I guess I'd gotten used to living in crisis mode. She reached out, lightly brushing my hand. No more crisis. Let's plan a real break for you. For us, some trip to the coast maybe, checking potential office sites but also enjoying the beach. My heart soared. That sounds amazing. We can turn it into a partial scouting mission for the West Coast branch. Her eyes sparkled. Exactly. Work and play. I chuckled, leaning in slightly. I love how your mind works, always blending practicality with enjoyment. She gave a faux offended gasp. You calling me pragmatic? I grinned. Absolutely, and it's one of your best traits. We laughed, then a soft hush replaced the banter. I studied her face, the warm glow of the overhead lighting accentuating her features. A surge of affection pulsed through me. I leaned in, pausing to gauge her reaction. She met me halfway, and our lips met in a gentle, lingering kiss. A wave of relief and thrill washed over me. This was real, not forced or overshadowed by deception. Heather kissed me back with equal tenderness, her fingertips grazing my cheek. When we pulled apart, her eyes glimmered with emotion. We shared a small laugh, undone by the sweetness of the moment. Then we resumed eating, though the atmosphere was irrevocably changed, electric, comforting, full of promise. So this is how a healthy connection begins, I thought, heart full. No secrets, no illusions, just two people taking a leap. In the following days, Heather and I kept our budding romance discreet at the office. We didn't hide it from close colleagues like Reed or Dawn, but we refrained from public displays. We wanted a professional environment, and we recognized how rumors could swirl. However, in private moments like working late or grabbing coffee before official start hours, we indulged in gentle affection, a shared grin, or a fleeting hand squeeze. One evening, I called Reed to let him know about the shift. He'd been my friend and lawyer through the worst times, so I owed him honesty. His reaction was supportive, albeit with a hint of teasing. "I'm happy for you, Joel. Just remember to keep it professional at the office. Office romances can be messy." I smirked. "Trust me, we're being cautious, but thanks for your concern." Dawn, on the other hand, squealed with joy when I told her. "Finally! I've been rooting for you two forever," she exclaimed. "Heather's so loyal and grounded. You guys complement each other." "Let's just keep it low-key," I cautioned, amused by her enthusiasm. "We're still figuring it out." She promised discretion. Still, I suspected half the office might sense the change in our chemistry eventually. Let them suspect, I told myself. As long as we're genuine and handle it well, there's nothing to hide or be ashamed of. The final stretch of my journey toward healing came in the form of new beginnings, both professionally and personally. Brian was locked away, Julia had relocated, and the city that once felt claustrophobic with gossip now felt like a place I could breathe. My cybersecurity firm was poised for the next big leap, with Heather and I balancing our professional partnership and a blossoming romance. And yet, life rarely concludes without a few last surprises. A month after Julia's farewell party, a letter arrived at my office, bearing the seal of a state correctional facility. My stomach twisted at the sight. Brian, I guessed. I retreated to my private office, shutting the door before opening the envelope. Sure enough, it was from him. A short, scrawled note. "Joel, by the time you read this, I'll have started my sentence in earnest. The DA offered me a deal if I cooperated about certain financial leads. Don't worry. I've got no reason to stir up old shit about you. For what it's worth, I'm sorry for my part in the fiasco. You were never my target personally, just a means to an end. That doesn't excuse it, but maybe it explains it. I was desperate, chasing money to cover my own debts. I messed up big time. Anyway, I'm done fighting you. Good luck with your life." Brian, I read it twice, uncertain how to feel. Apology or rationalization. But I sensed a weary resignation in his words, as though prison had forced a re-evaluation of his choices. I folded the note, setting it aside. If Brian was truly done, that was fine by me. I had no desire to maintain any connection. I texted Reed, telling him about the letter. He advised me to keep it for records, but not to overthink it. "He's likely just trying to wrap up loose ends or lighten his conscience," Reed said. "Focus on your future." I agreed wholeheartedly. Focus on the future I did, especially with the West Coast expansion ramping up. We'd chosen San Francisco as our target city, a tech hub that could accelerate our growth. Heather and I decided on a week-long trip to scout office spaces, meet potential clients, and enjoy some personal time. Our colleagues teased us about a business honeymoon, but we laughed it off, half mortified, half thrilled by how correct they were in a sense. We flew out early on a Sunday, the plane ride crackling with possibility. Heather gazed out the window as the city's iconic Golden Gate Bridge came into view. "This could be our next big chapter," she mused, excitement shining in her eyes. I gave her hand a gentle squeeze. Ours indeed. We landed, picked up a rental car, and headed to a boutique hotel near Soma. The vibe of San Francisco was electric startups on every corner, a swirl of culture and innovation. Over the next few days, we toured sleek office buildings, pitched to local investors, and held brainstorming sessions in trendy cafes. The synergy felt right, as though the city welcomed us. During downtime, we wandered the waterfront, tasting clam chowder in sourdough bowls, snapping photos of the bay. At night, we strolled through neighborhoods lined with Victorian houses, hand in hand, marveling at the hilly streets. The sense of freedom was intoxicating. Here, no one knew the baggage I carried in my old city. It's a fresh canvas for us in the company. Midweek, we arranged a dinner with a group of local tech entrepreneurs, hoping to forge alliances. The restaurant was upscale, all minimalist decor and panoramic views of the bay. After hours of lively conversation about cybersecurity threats and the city's booming scene, the group dispersed. Heather and I lingered, finishing our wine. She wore a simple yet elegant black dress, hair loosely pinned. In the low light, she looked radiant. I found myself leaning closer across the small table, wanting to memorize her face. "You're glowing," I said softly. She laughed, a melodic sound. "So are you. This city suits you, Joel." I shrugged, a shy grin forming. "It's not the city that's doing it." She blushed, and my heart soared. We left hand in hand, strolling along the moonlit bay. The gentle lapping of waves and the distant glow of the bridge set a romantic backdrop. We talked about everything: childhood dreams, personal fears, the possibility of us one day living here part-time if the expansion took off. We didn't decide anything concrete, but the conversation felt full of hope and affection. At one point, she halted, turning to face me. Her eyes shone with emotion. "Joel, do you ever stop and wonder how we got here together after all that chaos?" I nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "All the time. It's surreal. I never thought I'd trust again, let alone with someone I respect so deeply." She exhaled. "I'm scared too, but I refuse to let fear dictate my life. If we can handle everything we've already faced, we can handle a new city, new challenges together." I drew her close, pressing my forehead gently to hers. "Together," I echoed, my voice catching. Then I kissed her under the moonlight, the city's lights shimmering like a promise of new horizons. Returning to the hotel, we mulled over the success of our trip so far. We had a short list of potential office locations, a handful of prospective clients, and more than enough reason to believe launching here would be fruitful. The next morning, we met an agent who specialized in commercial real estate. She showed us a modern suite in a tech-friendly building, high ceilings, open layout, a prime location near major public transit. Heather was impressed. I was enthralled. We scheduled a follow-up with the building's management to hash out lease terms. That afternoon, we FaceTimed with our staff back home, Reed among them, plus a few department heads. They seemed as excited as we were about the possibilities. The synergy was incredible. It was as if the entire company stood on the threshold of a major evolution, and I was leading it with the woman I was falling for by my side. "What about the timeline for opening?" asked Sam, our product development lead, over the call. Heather glanced at me, nodding for me to take the question. I said, "If negotiations go well, we can secure a lease by next month. Renovations might take another month, so we're looking at a grand opening in about 3 months. We'll need a permanent presence from some of the leadership. Heather and I will rotate, at least initially." I caught her eye, a silent question passing between us. Are we ready for that kind of back-and-forth travel? Could we handle partial relocation? But her firm nod reassured me we'd figure it out. The next day, I decided to reward ourselves with a break from business. We took a ferry to Alcatraz Island, indulging in a touristy excursion. While exploring the old prison corridors, I found myself unexpectedly reflective. The cold cells, the stories of inmates who spent years behind bars, Brian's face popped into my mind. He's no Al Capone, but he's locked away, paying for his crimes. I felt no triumph in that, only acceptance. People made choices. He made his, I made mine. Heather sensed my introspection as we stood in a cramped cell. "Hey," she said gently, "what are you thinking about?" I gave a half smile. Just how far I've come from letting the ghost of Brian overshadow my life. Now I'm standing in a historical prison, ironically at peace while he's in a real one. She laced her fingers with mine. That's testament to your growth, Joel. You're free. Spiritually, emotionally, no longer his prisoner. I lifted our joined hands, pressing a light kiss to her knuckles. Yes, free to build a new chapter with you. She smiled, and the rest of the day felt like a personal victory lap, enjoying the ferry ride back, grabbing a late lunch near Fisherman's Wharf, laughing in the breeze. I never believed life could feel this sweet again. On our final night in San Francisco, we returned to the same boutique hotel lounge, sipping cocktails by a fireplace. The conversation drifted toward how we'd announce our budding relationship to the broader staff. Should we keep it private or be transparent? We both recognized the value of honesty. Heather twirled her glass. We can hold a meeting with the leadership team, letting them know we're dating but that our work relationship is unaffected, that we'll keep professional boundaries. We can set an example of how to handle it maturely. I nodded, her practical approach aligning with my own. Yes, no secrets. If the rumors swirl, we shut them down by being direct. She placed a hand on mine, a mischievous smile lurking. You've come a long way from the man who once walled off everything after being hurt. I squeezed her hand. You've shown me it's worth letting someone in again. Thank you. She leaned forward, eyes shining with tears that didn't fall. I'm the grateful one, Joel. We shared a tender moment, sealing the night with the warmth of each other's presence. This is the future I never dared to hope for, I thought, and it's here, within my grasp. Returning home, we carried the West Coast momentum with us. Our staff was elated about the prospective office space. Within 2 weeks, we hammered out a lease agreement, set up preliminary hiring. We spent evenings drafting press releases, planning an official announcement. In the swirl of activity, Heather and I managed to carve out personal time, a quiet dinner, a weekend movie night at her place, playful banter that melded into gentle affection. One crisp morning, as we prepared to announce the West Coast branch to the entire company, we gathered in the main conference room. Dozens of employees joined, some physically, others via video call. I stood at the podium, Heather by my side, a hush descending. Everyone, I began, voice resonating with excitement, thank you for your unwavering dedication. Today I'm thrilled to announce we've signed a lease in San Francisco. By quarter's end, we'll open our second headquarters. The room erupted in applause, cheers. My chest swelled with pride. This expansion is a testament to all of you, your hard work, innovation, and resilience during tough times. After the formal announcement, Heather took the mic, elaborating on the next steps, the leadership rotation, and the new positions we'd create. More applause. A wave of euphoria enveloped me. This is exactly the fresh horizon I needed. In the days following, rumors about me and Heather inevitably popped up. I heard whispers, some employees suspecting we were a couple. True to our plan, we held a quick leadership gathering. With measured composure, we stated that we'd begun seeing each other privately but remained committed to professional standards. The reaction was mostly positive. Some teased us, some nodded in acceptance, and no one seemed alarmed. Crisis averted. One evening, as we left the office together, I felt the weight of secrecy lifting off my shoulders. Heather smiled, her tension easing. We did it. That wasn't so bad. I slipped an arm around her waist. Honesty is liberating, huh? She leaned into me. Definitely. We walked to our cars, parted with a soft kiss. In that moment, I realized just how drastically my life had shifted in under a year, from a canceled wedding and heartbreak to building something real with Heather, from near scandal to successful expansion. A swirl of gratitude coursed through me. A month later, everything was in full swing. I traveled to San Francisco briefly to oversee the new office build-out. Heather handled local operations while I was gone, our trust in each other unwavering. On the final day of my trip, as I stood in the half-finished space wires hanging, walls freshly painted, I got a phone call from Dawn. Her voice crackled with excitement. Joel, guess what? We just reached a milestone in the community group. We have over 50 regular members now, and we're planning a bigger space. Some local sponsors have come on board thanks to your initial funding. I smiled at the echoing walls, picturing Dawn's bright grin. That's fantastic, Dawn. Congrats. She rattled on about how the group was changing lives, how some participants overcame severe emotional trauma, how my presence had inspired a few more men to open up. I felt a lump in my throat, realizing the ripple effect of my experience. Out of heartbreak came a tool to help others. We ended the call with mutual congratulations. I stared at the half-built office, imagining its future full of employees forging new tech solutions. My phone beeped with a text from Heather. "Miss you. Hurry back." A swirl of warmth, a reminder that love was possible after betrayal. Life truly does move forward. The day after I returned home, Heather invited me to dinner at her place. I arrived with a bottle of wine, my heart humming with happiness. She welcomed me in, the cozy apartment filled with the aroma of a simmering pasta sauce. A flicker of domestic joy shot through me, so different from the tension that used to haunt my relationships. Over the meal, we talked about everything: our families, upcoming business hires, my next trip west. Eventually, I leaned back, catching her gaze. "Heather, I can't believe how far we've come. Just a few months ago, I was burying the remnants of a broken wedding. Now I'm planning expansions and falling for you." She reached for my hand across the table. "I'm falling for you too, Joel. I'd never wish your heartbreak upon anyone, but in a strange way, it led us here." I nodded, a thick emotion welling in my throat. I wouldn't trade the lessons I've learned. They shaped me into someone more aware, more appreciative of what's real. She stood, walking around the table, and I rose to meet her. Under the soft glow of her apartment lights, we embraced, the simmering pot on the stove momentarily forgotten. When we pulled back, her eyes shimmered with tears of joy. "I love you," she whispered, voice trembling. My heart soared. "I love you too," I said, the words rolling off my tongue with certainty. We held each other, tears mingling with laughter. This is the final piece of closure, the final testament that I survived and thrived. The wedding fiasco, the betrayal, Brian's blackmail, Julia's meltdown, it all felt like a distant storm I'd weathered, emerging stronger on the other side. We finished dinner with music playing softly, a sense of calm enveloping us. At one point, I glanced at Heather across the flickering candles and realized that for the first time in a long while, I wasn't looking backward, haunted by regret. My gaze was fixed firmly on the horizon of what we could build together, with honesty, mutual respect, and a genuine spark of love. A few weeks later, I found myself back on that balcony in my penthouse, the city lights shimmering below, but everything felt different, lighter, brighter. My phone buzzed with a text from Heather, working late at her place. "Knocking out these HR docs. Miss you. See you tomorrow." Smiling, I typed a quick reply. I recalled the moment I stood here months ago, swirling with betrayal after discovering Julia's affair. How I'd felt caged in heartbreak, blindsided, humiliated. The contrast to now was almost dizzying. My new story wasn't perfect or guaranteed, but it was honest, built on shared respect and empathy. I took a deep breath, soaking in the city's hum, letting gratitude settle in my bones.